Marie knew they had emptied her desk before she saw the cardboard box. It sat beside Eric's chair in the Ferry Company office, sealed with gray tape. Someone had written Marie in black marker across the top. Her coffee mug, Peter's old binocular strap, 2 wool gloves, and 37 years of payroll notebooks had once filled 3 drawers and a cupboard. Now, whatever they considered hers fitted into a box meant for canned peaches. Eric remained behind the desk when she entered. At 43, he had Peter's broad shoulders, but none of Peter's habit of standing to greet people. Deborah sat near the window with a folder across her knees. She had been the company bookkeeper since before Marie married Peter. At 65, she still wore her silver hair cut straight at her jaw and kept a pencil behind her right ear. "Close the door, Marie," Deborah said. Marie closed it. Outside, one of the profitable ferry vessels rocked against the dock. Its diesel engine was running. A deckhand pulled freight netting over a stack of boxed groceries while the river wind slapped one loose corner against the rail. Marie had scheduled that delivery run for years. She knew which boxes held eggs, which medicine had to stay above freezing, and which landing became dangerous when the tide turned. Nobody had called her about the schedule since Peter's funeral. That had been almost 2 years earlier. The company had continued because work always continued. Eric took Peter's office. Deborah controlled the accounts. Marie kept answering the telephone until Eric hired someone younger and called it modernization. Now the telephone had been moved too. Eric pointed toward the chair opposite him. "We should get through this," he said. Marie sat but kept her coat buttoned. The office felt overheated. Peter used to complain about that thermostat every winter, then forget to replace it. Deborah opened the folder. "The final estate transfer has been recorded. The old Kazeloff property is yours as of Monday." She placed a document on the desk. Marie didn't pick it up. "You mean the landing office?" "The abandoned office," Eric said. "And the parcel around it. It wasn't abandoned when your father and I worked there. That was a long time ago." The first year of their marriage, Marie had slept upstairs in that building, whenever fog delayed the late crossing. She had cooked oatmeal on a hot plate and kept spare socks drying beside the weather radio. Peter would come in smelling of river water and diesel, leave muddy prints across the floor, and promise to mop them after supper. He almost never did. Deborah pushed another page forward. The appraisal came in at $18,000. Marie looked at it then. The photographs were taken in late winter. Snow covered the landing. One corner of the roof had sagged. The river stairs were missing 2 rails, and plywood had replaced a downstairs window. The report listed water damage, obsolete equipment, heating concerns, taxes, and possible foundation movement. The last page called the property a liability with limited commercial use. "Who gave the appraiser access?" Marie asked. Eric glanced at Deborah. "I did," Deborah said. "We still had Peter's keys. You had keys to my property before I did. It wasn't yours when the inspection happened." Marie rested her hands in her lap. The fingers of her right hand pressed into the sore place beneath her left thumb. Peter used to notice that. It meant she was holding back words that would cost too much once spoken. Eric leaned forward. "We're not trying to make this harder. No, the company owns the vessels. It owns the operating accounts and the house attached to the current dock. That was all settled in the succession agreement. The house where I lived with your father." "The manager's house," Deborah corrected. Marie looked toward the window. Peter's rain jacket had once hung on the hook beside it. Eric's blue company vest hung there now. She had understood the papers. That didn't make the facts feel honest. Years earlier, Peter had explained that the waterfront house belonged to the company because banks preferred clean asset lists. The vessels belonged to the company. The fuel tanks, dock, warehouse, and operating money belonged to it too. Peter's shares passed mostly to Eric, with the rest to Deborah, exactly as the family succession papers provided. Marie had signed those papers beside Peter. At the time, she believed a marriage could carry what documents didn't. Peter believed it too, or wanted to. After his death, that belief had nowhere to stand. Deborah set a ring of keys on the desk. "The old office is the personal property he left to you. We're honoring that." There were 6 keys. One was new and silver. 2 were ordinary brass door keys. Another was small enough for a cabinet. The last 2 had faded metal tags stamped weather and gauge. Marie touched the gauge key with one finger. Eric saw the movement. "Most of that equipment is junk. You can clear it out. Have you been inside recently? I walked through with the appraiser. Did you go into the tide room? The what? The narrow room under the river stairs. Eric's face tightened. He disliked discovering that a place he had dismissed contained a room he hadn't noticed. No, he said. The lower door was stuck. Marie picked up the keys. They were cold from the desk. Deborah watched her put them into her handbag. She had expected an argument, perhaps tears. A quiet acceptance felt safer, but it also made her uneasy. Marie had never been loud when she reached a decision. You don't have to keep it, Deborah said. Nobody expects you to live there. Where do you expect me to live? Eric looked down at the appraisal. Marie had been staying in a rented room off North Coho Loop Road. The room had a narrow bed, a microwave on a plastic shelf, and a view of somebody else's shed. Most of her clothes remained in boxes. Eric knew that. Deborah did too. We can give you some time, Eric said. To do what? To make arrangements. You told me last week the room was my responsibility after Friday. I meant, we can help move things. Marie looked at the box beside his chair. You already did. Eric's mouth opened, then closed. Through the window, the deckhand cast off the stern line. The vessel eased away from the dock. Marie noticed the freight netting had been tied too high on the aft cleat. Who loaded the run? She asked. Eric followed her eyes. Cal did. That medicine case is beside the exhaust housing. It's secured. It'll be warm before they reach the lower landing. Eric stood and went to the window. The white insulated case was visible between two grocery stacks. He grabbed the radio from the desk. Cal, move the medical case forward. Keep it away from the exhaust. A burst of static came back. Then the deckhand answered. Marie said nothing. Eric replaced the radio. He didn't thank her. That would have meant admitting she still understood the work better than the people he had put in her chair. Deborah slid the transfer document closer. We need your acknowledgement that you received the keys. Marie read the line before signing. It acknowledged keys, nothing else. She wrote her name and dated it. Deborah blotted the signature with a piece of paper, an old habit from the years of carbon forms. You'll need insurance, she said. And the taxes are due in September. How much? Just under $2,000. And the electricity? Disconnected. Water? We don't know. Marie looked at Eric. You walked through. I didn't test the plumbing. Of course. He came around the desk and lifted the cardboard box. I can carry this to your car. I can carry it. Marie, my shoulder is bad, not missing. He let go of the box. The left shoulder had troubled her since a loading ramp slipped 4 years earlier. Peter had wanted her examined in Anchorage. She had gone once, done the exercises for a while, then returned to work before it healed properly. The company had been short-handed that month. It was always short-handed when somebody needed time. Marie lifted the box against her right hip. It was lighter than she expected. At the door, Deborah said, There's nothing personal in this. Marie turned. Deborah had already lowered her eyes to the folder. Eric was staring at the vessel moving downriver. Marie understood what Deborah meant. Business was the place where the Spencer family put every decision they didn't want to examine too closely. I know, Marie said. That's the problem. She carried the box outside. Her car was a 12-year-old Subaru with a dent above the rear wheel. 2 suitcases filled the back seat. A grocery bag held bread, coffee, canned soup, and a jar of peanut butter. On the passenger floor sat a toolbox Peter had given her when they closed the old landing. The box fitted in the rear cargo space with room left for little else. Marie stood beside the open hatch and looked back at the company office. Nobody came out. That hurt more than she had prepared for. She shut the hatch and drove south. Clouds hung low over the Kenai Peninsula. Spruce trees crowded both sides of North Coho Loop Road, dark from recent rain. At the turn toward the old landing, the pavement narrowed and then gave way to gravel. Marie hadn't driven that stretch in 5 years. She remembered every bend. The old company sign was still fastened to 2 posts near the road. Spencer Ferry office had once been painted in red. Most of the paint had peeled away, leaving pale letters against gray wood. Beyond it stood the building. The office was 2 stories, narrow and weather-beaten, with the riverside raised on thick timber supports. The lower floor faced the landing. The upstairs rooms had 3 small windows beneath a sloping metal roof. One window was boarded. Another reflected the dull afternoon sky. The roof sag shown in the appraisal looked worse in person. Marie parked beside a patch of fireweed and turned off the engine. Rain ticked against the windshield. For several minutes she stayed in the driver's seat. Peter had brought her there during the summer before they married. He had handed her a ring of keys and said, If you can keep this office straight, you can keep me straight. She had laughed because she didn't yet know those would become two separate jobs. Now he was gone, his family had her desk, and the building nobody wanted waited beside a cold river. Marie took the keys from her handbag. The new silver key opened a padlock Eric had placed on the front door. The older brass key turned the lock beneath it. The door dragged across the floor because the bottom hinge had dropped. Inside, the office smelled of damp wood, mouse droppings, and old fuel. The freight counter remained along the left wall. A wooden tideboard covered the wall behind it. Its painted columns showed landing depths, current direction, and safe loading limits. Most of the numbers had faded, but Marie could still read Peter's handwriting near the bottom. A round clock hung above the counter, stopped at 20 minutes past 6. On the right stood the weather desk. The radio was gone. The brass barometer remained, along with a cracked thermometer and a row of empty hooks. Water dripped somewhere upstairs. Marie set down her handbag and found the electrical panel. The main switch was off. She left it that way. A damp building and old wiring were poor company. The stairs creaked under her weight. Halfway up, she felt cold water strike her forehead. The ceiling above the landing was stained brown. A steady drip fell from the edge of a light fixture into a rusted wastebasket somebody had placed beneath it. The basket was nearly full. Marie climbed the remaining steps and found the upstairs bedroom door swollen shut. She pushed with her right shoulder, stopped when pain ran across her left one, then tried the old office trick. She lifted the knob while pressing near the lower hinge. The door opened. The room beyond held a narrow iron bed, a dresser, and rolled linoleum curling at the corners. Water had entered near the chimney pipe and run down the wall. The mattress was damp along one side, but the floor beneath it felt solid. She found a metal basin in the kitchenette and placed it below the leak. Then she opened the cabinet under the sink. The main water valve was there, exactly where she remembered. It had been left half open. A split copper joint dripped into the bottom of the cabinet. Marie turned the valve shut. The dripping slowed, then stopped. That was one problem separated from the others. She went back downstairs and tried the door beneath the river stairs. Eric had said it was stuck. Marie inserted the key-marked gauge, leaned her hip against the frame, and lifted the latch before turning. The lock clicked. The narrow tide room smelled of mud and iron. A vertical measuring rod disappeared through a slot in the floor toward the river. Shelves held oil cans, marker flags, and weatherproof logbooks with swollen covers. On the wall, behind a sheet of cloudy plastic, hung an old route chart. Marie wiped the plastic with her sleeve. Most of the ink had faded. Pencil lines crossed the river between landing points she had once known by memory. A small brass plate beneath the chart read, "Route Records." She felt around the frame and found no drawer or latch. Nothing moved except the lower wooden trim, which shifted slightly beneath her fingers. Marie crouched. The trim had been fitted over a clean seam. Before she could test it, rain struck the roof harder. A drop landed on the back of her neck, then another. Shelter came first. Peter had taught every new deckhand that much. Secure the people, secure the vessel, then study the trouble. Marie returned to the car for the blue tarp folded beneath her groceries. She carried it upstairs with a coil of rope and opened the river window. The roof below was slick, too steep to trust, and her shoulder warned her before she placed one knee on the sill. She listened to it. Instead of climbing out, she tied the tarp inside, angled it beneath the leak, and ran one corner into the basin. It wasn't pretty, but the water followed the plastic and fell where she wanted it. Downstairs, she cleared a dry space behind the counter. She brought in one suitcase, the groceries, Peter's toolbox, and finally the cardboard box from the company office. At the bottom was her old red ledger pencil. Marie sharpened it with Peter's pocket knife, found a blank page in a damp logbook, and wrote 3 items: roof, waterline, tide room seam. Then she took the stopped clock from the wall, opened its back, and replaced the corroded battery with one from her flashlight. The second hand began moving. Marie hung the clock above the counter, pulled on her coat, and went outside to find the shutoff for the landing pump. The pump housing stood 20 yards from the office, half hidden by grass and rusted cable. Marie found it by following the water line from the building. Rain had softened the ground around the lid. She scraped mud from the handle with Peter's pocket knife and pulled. The lid rose an inch, then caught. She put one foot against the concrete rim and tried again. Pain moved from her left shoulder into her neck. She stopped before it could become the kind of pain that lasted all week. Her telephone rang inside the office. By the time she reached it, the screen showed 3 missed calls from Deborah. Marie called back. Finally, Deborah said, "Did you take the yellow freight ledger? I took the box you packed. We need the ledger from the lower drawer. There was nothing yellow in the box." Deborah covered the receiver and said something to someone nearby. Marie heard papers moving. "Then it may be in Peter's cabinet," Deborah said. "You know the one I mean. I know all the cabinets. It has the clinic delivery codes. Eric needs the code for the medical freight account." Marie looked at the grocery bag on the counter. Rain tapped through the bad roof and ran along the tarp into the basin upstairs. "The current code is written inside the back cover of the blue dispatch book," she said, "not the freight ledger." There was a pause. "Which blue book?" "The one beside the radio charger." "I'm looking at 4 blue books, the narrow one with a strip of white tape on the spine." Marie heard Deborah pull it free. "Yes," Deborah said, "I have it. The code won't work until you enter the delivery date." "What?" 6 digits, month, day, year. Then the account code. Another pause followed. Eric's voice came faintly through the telephone. "Got it," Deborah said. That was all. She was about to hang up. "Did the medicine reach the lower landing?" Marie asked. "I assume so." "You called me 3 times for the code, but you don't know whether it arrived. Eric is handling the run." Marie waited. Deborah understood the silence. "I'll ask." Marie heard another quiet exchange. "It arrived," Deborah said. "The case stayed cold." "Good. If you come across company records at the old office, they need to be returned." "Which records?" "Anything related to Ferry operations." "That office was Ferry operations. Then use your judgment." Deborah hung up. Marie stood with the silent telephone in her hand. She had answered every question as if she were still sitting at her desk. She had even waited to hear that the medicine was safe. For one foolish second, she had hoped Deborah might ask whether the roof was holding. The hope embarrassed her more than the silence did. Marie put the telephone down and returned to the pump housing. She brought the tire iron from her car and slid its flat end beneath the lid. This time, the cover lifted. The shutoff wheel sat at the bottom of a narrow concrete chamber. It was red with rust but still attached. Marie reached down with the tire iron and pushed the wheel clockwise. It resisted, moved a fraction, then turned. Somewhere beneath the building, the pipe gave a low knock. She turned until the wheel stopped. Now the broken joint couldn't empty the well or flood the upstairs cabinet. It also meant she had no running water, but that was tomorrow's trouble. By early evening, the rain had eased. Marie carried both suitcases upstairs and laid her coat over the dry end of the mattress. She ate 2 slices of bread with peanut butter and drank half a bottle of water. There was no heat. The temperature wasn't dangerous yet, but the damp entered through her sleeves and settled against her skin. She switched on her telephone flashlight and opened the cardboard box. Eric and Deborah had packed her belongings without care, but they hadn't thrown anything away. Beneath the gloves lay her mug, wrapped in an old fuel invoice. Peter's binocular strap was tangled around a stapler. The payroll notebooks had bent corners. At the bottom, under a packet of rubber bands, she found a photograph. It showed the old office on a clear summer morning. Peter stood beside the freight counter wearing a canvas cap and a red life vest. Roger was behind him, holding a coil of rope. Marie stood in the doorway with a clipboard against her chest. All 3 of them were younger. The building was painted white then, with blue trim around the windows. Flower boxes hung beneath the upstairs sill. Marie had planted nasturtiums because they survived wind and neglect. On the back, Peter had written, "First full season with Marie running the office." She sat on the edge of the bed and read the sentence twice. Peter gave praise easily in private. In front of his family, he softened it. He would say Marie helped with the schedules when she had written them. He said she kept an eye on the accounts when she had found the billing errors. If Deborah objected to a decision, Peter called it a family matter and asked Marie to give him time. Marie had always given him time. She had told herself peace was a form of loyalty. Sometimes it was. Sometimes it only allowed the louder person to keep the chair. Her telephone showed no new message from Eric. She put the photograph beside the old clock she had carried upstairs. The ticking filled the room. The next morning, a truck came down the gravel road shortly after 7. It was an old green pickup with a square front and a ladder tied along one side. Roger Welch climbed out wearing rubber boots, work pants, and a wool cap pulled over his ears. At 73, he walked with a slight turn in his right knee, but he moved quickly once he had both feet on the ground. Marie opened the front door. "You look terrible," he said. "So do you." "Good. I brought coffee." He lifted a metal flask from the truck, then pulled out a plastic water container and a small propane heater. Marie stepped aside. "You planning to stay?" "No. I remember the upstairs mattress. You remember sleeping on it. I remember falling through it. You were wearing your deck boots. I'd had a difficult night. You'd had 6 beers, 6 difficult beers." He carried the heater inside and set it near the freight counter. Marie opened 2 windows before he lit it. Roger looked around while the flames settled. "Smells the same," he said. "No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't." His eyes stopped on the tideboard. For a moment, he seemed to expect Peter to come through the river door, complaining about a missing wrench. Roger had worked with him for more than 4 decades. Grief sat differently on him. It appeared in the places he avoided looking. Marie poured coffee into the cap of the flask. "How did you know I was here?" "Eric called me yesterday." She lowered the cup. "He called you, said you might need help moving." "I'm not moving out. I gathered that." "What else did he say?" "That the building wasn't safe and you were being stubborn." Roger took a second cup from his coat pocket. "I told him those were 2 separate facts." Marie almost smiled. "Did he ask you to talk me into selling?" "He didn't use the word selling." "What word did he use?" "Practical." There it was. Peter had used the same word whenever Eric or Deborah wanted Marie to accept less than she had earned. Roger poured his coffee. "I came because you left me a message about the pump," he said. "Not because Eric called. I didn't want you caught between us. I'm too old to stand between moving objects. You're not too old to choose a side." "No," he said, "I'm not." He drank his coffee, then set the cup down. "Show me the pipe." They worked in the upstairs kitchenette first. Roger held a flashlight while Marie removed the damaged fitting. The split was clean and recent, likely caused by trapped winter water. "You have replacement copper?" she asked. "I have a short length in the truck. Same size? I worked on these buildings before hardware stores sold coffee. That isn't an answer. Yes, same size." He returned with the pipe, a cutter, and a small torch. Marie cleaned the joint while Roger cut the new section. When her shoulder began to tighten, he took the abrasive cloth from her without comment. They had the repair finished before 9. Roger opened the outside shutoff while Marie watched the joint. Water shuddered through the pipes. Brown air spat from the kitchen tap, followed by a narrow stream. The repaired joint stayed dry. Marie held one finger beneath it, then wiped the underside with a paper towel. No moisture appeared. "That'll hold," she said. "It held the first time I fixed it." "You installed this?" "Peter and I did. You were in Anchorage ordering the new ticket machine, the machine he told everyone he chose." Roger looked at her. "You chose it." "I know." They went downstairs. Marie showed him the appraisal photographs and pointed toward the timber supports beneath the riverside. Roger put on a rain jacket, took a hammer from Peter's toolbox, and crawled beneath the building. Marie waited outside. She heard the dull sound of metal against wood, moving from one support to the next. Roger emerged with mud on one sleeve. "The foundations aren't shifting," he said. "One brace is loose. That's all." The appraiser said, "Possible movement." The appraiser looked at a crooked porch and frightened himself. "So, the building isn't falling into the river." "Not today." It was a small answer, but Marie felt her breathing change. They checked the roof from the ladder. Roger climbed only high enough to see over the edge. He didn't step onto the wet metal. "Flashing around the chimney is gone," he called down. "2 roof sheets have lifted. Some decking may be soft." "How bad?" "Bad enough to fix before the next hard rain." "How much?" "If you hire it out, several thousand. Maybe more once they open it." "If we do it?" "We don't go onto a wet roof." I said if. Roger climbed down carefully. "If you buy the materials, we can stabilize it. But you need someone younger for the high work." Marie folded her arms against the cold. She disliked that answer because it was correct. Inside, Roger examined the weather desk. The lower cabinet was locked. Marie tried the small key from the ring. It turned, but the cabinet door remained caught against the warped floor. Together, they lifted the front edge and pulled. The door opened with a groan. Inside were replacement gauge cards, weather forms, and a wooden case containing a handheld current meter. The meter had been cleaned and oiled. A cloth wrapped around its handle felt almost new. Roger lifted it. This wasn't left here from the old days. How can you tell? I serviced these. That oil would have dried years ago. Did Peter bring it? Roger's thumb moved across the clean metal fitting. He came down here sometimes, he said. When? After the regular landing closed. Once or twice a year, maybe more. He'd say he was checking markers. Which markers? He never said. You didn't ask? Peter didn't like questions when he'd already decided something was his responsibility. Marie knew that was true. It was also not enough. Roger returned the meter to its case. Behind it lay a stack of maintenance books, each labeled by year. The newest spine was marked 2024. Marie reached toward it, then stopped. A torn envelope rested on top. Her name was written across the front in Peter's hand, but the envelope was empty. Roger saw it too. Did he ever give you a letter? He asked. No. Marie turned the envelope over. Nothing was written on the back. The empty paper could mean Peter had intended to leave something there. It could also mean he had reused an old envelope to hold receipts. Peter saved envelopes, jars, screws, and pieces of rope too short for any sensible purpose. She placed it beside the wooden case. Roger nodded toward the tide room. What's behind that door? The landing gauge and old route charts. That lock was frozen last time I tried it. It opened for me. Of course it did. Marie led him inside. The measuring rod still passed through the floor. Roger took hold of its handle and worked it gently. At first, it didn't move. Marie opened the riverside vent and cleared packed dirt from the guide track with a screwdriver. Try now, she said. Roger pulled again. The rod rose. Water markings appeared along its lower section, dark but readable. The mechanism gave a high metal squeak, then settled into place. Marie looked through the vent toward the river. The reading matched the level she expected for that hour and tide. The old landing gauge still worked. She wrote the reading and time on a blank weather form. Her hand moved from habit, neat and quick. Roger watched her. You miss it? He said. The paperwork, knowing what happens next. Marie clipped the form to the board. She had thought she missed the family office. She had thought she needed Eric to hand back her chair, or Deborah to admit the schedules had been hers. Standing in the narrow tide room, she saw something less comfortable. For years, being useful had allowed her to avoid asking whether she was respected. She had accepted every request because somebody needing her felt close enough to somebody choosing her. Her telephone rang again. Eric's name appeared on the screen. Marie let it ring once, twice, then answered. Did you find any company records? He asked. I found records from this landing. We need them returned. I'll sort what belongs to the company from what belongs with the property. That's not necessary. Deborah can sort them. It's necessary to me. Marie, don't make a problem out of old paperwork. She looked at the working gauge, the empty envelope, and the maintenance book marked with Peter's final year. I'm not making one, she said. I'm finding out what's already here. After she hung up, she locked the tide room and put the gauge key in her coat pocket. Roger waited until she put the telephone away. You planning to tell me what that was about? Eric wants every record moved to the company office before you read them. That appears to be the idea. Roger looked toward the locked door. Then we should make coffee. The propane heater had taken the damp edge off the front room. Marie set the kettle on a single burner, while Roger carried the maintenance books to the freight counter. They began with the oldest book in the stack. Most entries were ordinary: gauge cleaned, cable greased, ice damage noted, north marker repainted. The work continued after the old landing stopped carrying scheduled passengers. At first, the entries were months apart. Later, they appeared at least once each season. All were in Peter's handwriting. Roger turned a page. I was with him for this one. The entry described a spring inspection after river ice shifted one of the guideposts. He asked you to help repair it? He asked me to hold the boat steady. He repaired it. What did he say it was for? He said a landing marker ought to remain a landing marker. That sounds like Peter. It was usually easier to do the work than get an answer from him. Marie poured hot water over instant coffee. Roger had brought good coffee in the flask, but he had already finished most of it. The instant kind tasted bitter and familiar. It had been standard equipment in the old office. She opened the book marked 2024. The first entries recorded winter ice depth and spring movement. In May, Peter noted that the gauge cable had been replaced. In June, he cleaned the lower guide and checked the opposite marker. The final entry was dated less than a month before he died. Gauge reading confirmed. North marker sound, south marker visible, certification maintenance complete. Beneath it, Peter had written a route record number. Marie read it again. What does Kazaloff E31 mean? Roger leaned over the page. Could be an equipment number. It isn't? Equipment numbers started with S. Maybe Deborah changed the system. She didn't change anything without putting it in 3 separate binders. Marie ran one finger beneath the words. Peter had pressed hard enough to leave an impression on the next page. The entry didn't belong in a routine maintenance book. Route records were kept separately from equipment logs. The current company office had shelves of them, mostly vessel routes, fuel stops, docking permissions, and agreements with landowners. Marie knew the active route numbers. She had typed them into reports for years. She had never seen this one. Roger turned back through the book. The same number appeared beside an entry from the previous autumn. Marie checked the older volumes. It appeared again. Not often, once each year, sometimes twice. Always beside a marker inspection, gauge reading, or maintenance certification. The first one in this stack is here, she said. The entry was from 2007. Peter had written only 4 words beside the number. Updated record filed, markers confirmed. Marie sat back. In 2007, Peter had started training Lauren Avila on dispatch and landing safety. He had also spent several weeks reorganizing office records. Marie remembered stacks of maps covering their kitchen table. Peter said the company needed updated route files before winter. She had assumed they were company routes. Was there an earlier book? She asked. Roger checked the cabinet. Not here. The old route register may have a cross-reference. Would that be at Eric's office? No. The active register moved there. The old one stayed here because Peter said the pages were too brittle. Where? Marie looked around the front room. The register had once rested on a slanted stand beside the tide board. The stand was gone. A pale rectangle on the wall showed where it had been attached. She checked beneath the counter and behind the weather desk. Roger searched the upstairs cabinets. They found ticket rolls, faded notices, a broken telephone, and a box of carbon paper. No register. When Roger returned, Marie was examining the wooden trim beneath the route chart. You noticed that yesterday, he said. It moves. Everything in this building moves, not in a straight line. She removed Peter's pocket knife and worked the blade gently into the seam. The wood shifted outward but stopped after half an inch. Roger knelt beside her. There may be a catch. Or a nail. Let me see. He ran his fingers beneath the lower edge. Near the right corner, he found a small recessed latch clogged with dirt. Marie cleaned it with the screwdriver. When she pressed it, something released inside the wall. The trim swung forward. Behind it was a shallow compartment no deeper than her hand. It held one folded sheet of paper wrapped around a brass key. The paper was an old maintenance checklist. Peter had written Marie's name across the top. Her pulse changed, but the rest of the page contained only ordinary instructions. Check gauge cable before spring runoff, clear north sight line, confirm tide board entries against route register, keep key with office records. At the bottom, he had added a short note. If the numbers don't agree, trust the register and walk the line. Roger read over her shoulder. What line? That's what I'd like to know. Marie unfolded the paper completely. No map was drawn on it. No explanation appeared on the back. The brass key was longer than the others. A flat metal tag attached to it bore the same route record number. The compartment held nothing else. Roger sat back on his heels. He wanted you to find that. He wrote my name. He could have left it somewhere easier. Peter believed an instruction was easy if it made sense to him. Marie examined the key. Its teeth were dark with age, but the sides showed recent wear. She tried it in the route chart frame, the gauge housing, and the old cabinets. It fitted none of them. Walk the line, Roger said, could mean the markers. Marie looked at the final maintenance entry. Then we walk it. The rain had stopped, though water still dripped from the spruce branches. Roger carried a brush hook. Marie took the binoculars and the maintenance checklist. The path from the office to the landing descended through wet grass. Sections of the old railing leaned toward the river. The stairs were slick, and Marie placed each foot carefully. At the bottom, the landing platform extended over brown moving water. One corner had lost several deck boards. Yellow tape hung from a post, left by the appraiser. Marie stayed on the solid section. The measuring rod was visible below them. Roger worked its outside handle while Marie compared the reading with the morning tide table stored in the weather cabinet. The difference was less than an inch. "The gauge is accurate," she said. "Close enough for river work. Accurate." Roger adjusted his cap. "Accurate, then." Marie raised the binoculars. Across the Kazaloff River, alders crowded the opposite bank. At first, she saw nothing that could be called a landing. Then sunlight caught a white vertical shape between the branches. The south marker. It stood above a narrow break in the brush, its top painted orange. The paint was newer than the weathered lower section. "Do you see it?" Roger asked. "Yes." She handed him the binoculars. He found it and became still. "I helped Peter replace that cap," he said. "When?" "The summer before he died. You told me he came here once or twice a year. You didn't mention helping him. I'd forgotten which marker it was." Marie looked at him. Roger lowered the binoculars. "That's the truth. He picked me up early, we crossed in his skiff, and he had the new cap in the truck. I thought it was one of the old navigation markers. Did you ask why he was replacing it?" "He said the sight line had to remain visible." "For whom?" "He didn't say." They followed the near bank north. The old line path was mostly gone. Fireweed and young willow covered the ground. Marie moved slowly, watching for cut brush, wire, or painted timber. 50 yards from the landing, Roger found an iron pin driven into a buried concrete base. A metal hood protected its top. The long brass key fitted the hood's lock. Marie turned it. Inside, the iron pin carried a stamped plate. Mud filled most of the letters. She cleaned it with a corner of the maintenance checklist. KE31 was stamped across the top. Below it, an arrow pointed directly toward the marker on the opposite bank. The route record wasn't a mistaken entry. It was attached to a physical line across the river. Marie stood behind the arrow and raised the binoculars. The opposite marker rested exactly in the center of her view. She knew the line then, not its current meaning, but the work itself. Years ago, she and Peter had measured a crossing there. They spent several cold mornings taking bearings from both sides of the river. Marie held the sighting instrument, while Peter marked distances in a field book. They were testing an emergency approach for times when ice or debris blocked the main ferry path. She remembered arguing about the near marker. Peter wanted it closer to the landing. Marie showed him that spring runoff would undercut the bank. They placed it where she recommended. She hadn't thought about that survey in years. "This was our emergency line," she said. Roger looked across the water. "I thought that was farther upriver. The first trial was. We moved it." "Was it ever used?" "Once during a fuel spill response, and for 2 medical drills. Maybe more after I moved to the current office." She looked down at the stamped plate. "Why maintain a route nobody was using?" Roger asked. Peter didn't maintain things for decoration. Roger crouched near the concrete base. He pressed a thumbnail into the sealant around it. This was redone recently. "By Peter?" "Most likely. He used this gray marine compound on everything, said the black kind looked sloppy. Marie remembered buying tubes of it. Peter used to leave them beside the laundry sink, where the caps hardened before he needed them again. She photographed the plate, the arrow, and the opposite marker. Then she photographed the brass key beside the number. The action felt simple, but it changed the question. The family believed the building had no commercial use. Peter's record showed he had maintained a marked crossing until the year he died. He had hidden the key with instructions addressed to Marie. That didn't prove value or ownership. It proved intention. He had been keeping something active. On the way back, Roger stopped beside the damaged railing. "If you plan to keep using these stairs, this section has to be replaced." "I know. And the landing needs deck boards. I know that too." Knowing is getting expensive. They found a local contractor at the office door when they returned. He had come after Marie left a message early that morning. He inspected the roof, electrical panel, upstairs water damage, stairs, railings, and landing deck. He wrote figures on a printed estimate while standing at the freight counter. "To make the upstairs safe for regular occupancy and open the lower floor to anybody besides you two, you're looking at about $28,000, he said. Marie kept her face still. "Does that include replacing the whole roof? How soon can you start?" "I can reserve a crew, but you'd need a deposit. After the 1st of October, weather decides the schedule." He left the estimate on the counter and drove away. Marie had a little over $31,000 in savings. It was nearly everything she could reach without selling her car. The taxes, food, fuel, and insurance still had to come from somewhere. Roger read the total. "You don't have to decide today." "No. You could repair the upstairs first and leave the landing unsafe. You aren't operating a landing. Marie glanced toward the tide room. Not yet, she thought, though she wasn't ready to say it. She photographed each page containing the route record number. Then she placed the original books back in order, locked the cabinet, and kept the long brass key with the gauge key. I'm going to find that route register, she said. Roger looked at the contractor's estimate. And if the register says this line is nothing, then I'll know what I'm paying to save. And if it says something else? Marie picked up Peter's maintenance checklist. Then Eric can wait for his paperwork. Roger ran his hand along the freight counter. The register stand used to be here. The outline is still on the wall. Peter built that stand himself. Heavy thing. Marie looked at the pale rectangle again. 4 screw holes marked its corners. A 5th hole sat near the bottom, too low and too large for an ordinary mounting screw. She pressed the end of the red ledger pencil into it. Something clicked behind the wall. The tide board shifted forward. Roger caught its edge before it struck the counter. Together, they lowered it on 2 concealed hinges. Behind it was a narrow wall, recess-lined with metal. The old route register lay inside, wrapped in waxed canvas. Peter had this made after the pipe burst upstairs, Marie said. You knew about it? I knew the tide board opened. I didn't know he moved the register behind it. Roger lifted the bundle onto the counter. The canvas was dry, so was the thick black cover beneath it. The register weighed nearly 15 pounds. Its pages were bound with metal posts, so worn entries could be replaced without disturbing the rest of the book. Marie carried it to the weather desk and cleared a space. A handwritten index filled the opening pages. The company's early scheduled routes occupied most of it. Several had been crossed out when landing agreements ended. Others carried notes directing the reader to newer records at the current office. Marie found the emergency section near the back. The numbers started with Kozloff E. Her finger moved down the column until it reached 31. The entry directed her to page 112. Roger turned the pages while Marie held the binding flat. Page 112 had been reinforced along its edge. A typed route description covered the front. Peter's handwritten maintenance notes filled the back. Marie read the first paragraph aloud. Emergency crossing from the Spencer Ferry office parcel on the North Bank to the protected South Landing for medical transport, essential freight, evacuation, and approved public service when regular approaches are unavailable. Roger leaned closer. That's a real route. It was. The original entry date was from the year Marie and Peter surveyed the line. Below it, a later notation showed the route had been updated and recorded 9 years afterward. The office parcel number appeared beside the north landing. The south side was described by marker position and a protected access agreement. A boxed instruction required the operating base to maintain visible markers, a working gauge, an annual reading log, and safe landing access. Marie read it twice. Peter's maintenance entries matched each requirement. He hadn't been repairing random pieces of the old landing. He had been preserving the route as a system. Roger pointed toward a line near the bottom. What does recorder reference mean? It means another document was filed somewhere. Does that make the route yours? I don't know. The office is yours. The building is. We need to know what the recorded paper says. She checked the register pocket where route maps were normally kept. It was empty. A stamped card remained inside. Original route map retained with recording archive. The card listed a book and page reference, but no copy of the map. Roger exhaled through his nose. Peter could have written one plain sentence. He probably thought the route description was plain. Did you know he filed an update? No. Would you have signed something? I don't remember signing anything in 2007. Marie looked toward the river. She remembered the earlier survey clearly. Peter had carried the tripod. Marie carried the field book and sighting tool. They spent 3 mornings correcting bearings because the first line passed too close to a gravel shelf. What she didn't remember was what happened to the finished map. She had signed many field sheets during those years. Her signature confirmed measurements, freight counts, training logs, and maintenance checks. Peter handled the recording appointments. Deborah handled company files. The register answered one question. Peter had maintained the landing for a specific recorded route. It opened several others. Marie called the borough records office. She gave the clerk the recorder reference from the card. The clerk typed while Marie waited. Keys clicked in the background. I see an index entry, the clerk said. Emergency crossing record, updated in 2007. Can you email me a copy? Not from this entry. It references an original oversized map. Where is the map? It may be in archived plats or the old linen collection. Those weren't all scanned. How long does a search take? A few business days if the box number is correct. Longer if it was moved during storage. I need to know what the record covers. The index says route location and landing maintenance. That's all I can confirm from this screen. Does it identify the property that holds the route? Not in the public index. Marie gave her name, telephone number, and email address. The clerk promised to submit a search request. When the call ended, Roger tapped the register page, so we wait. We check what we can check. They carried the current meter to the landing. Marie set a folding staff beside the gauge and took readings at 3 points along the near approach. Roger recorded the numbers. The river moved faster near the center channel. Marie knew it would. The emergency line crossed upstream of a bend, where the current spread before turning south. They worked for nearly an hour. On the final reading, the current meter stuttered. Roger pulled it free. A strand of old fishing line had wrapped around the small rotor. Marie removed the line with Peter's pocket knife and cleaned the spindle with oil from the wooden case. She spun the rotor with one finger. It turned freely. "Try again," she said. The second reading held steady. Marie compared it with Peter's final entry. River level differed, but the relationship between depth and current remained close. The channel had shifted slightly, not enough to break the route line. She raised the orange gauge flag on the outside pole. It was the old signal for active measurement. The fabric had faded, but it still caught the wind. A dark utility vehicle slowed on the gravel road above them. It continued another 50 yards, stopped, and back toward the office. Lauren Avila stepped out wearing work boots, dark trousers, and a green cooperative jacket. At 39, she carried herself with the alert stillness Peter had tried to teach every trainee and managed to teach only a few. She walked down the path and looked first at the flag, then at Marie. "I thought that was you," Lauren said. Marie lowered the current meter. "You recognize me from 100 yards away?" "I recognize the way you hold the line. Peter used to complain that I held it like a fishing pole. He was right. I know that now." Lauren hugged Marie briefly. She had attended Peter's funeral, but the room had been crowded and Eric kept the company people close around him. Marie remembered receiving Lauren's condolences and little else. Lauren turned toward Roger. "You're still letting her tell you what to do. Only near water. What are you testing?" Marie didn't answer immediately. The register's meaning was still uncertain. She had learned what came from sharing unfinished information with people who treated it as theirs. "The old emergency approach," she said. "We found its maintenance record." Lauren looked across the river. "E31? Marie's grip tightened around the line. "You know it?" "I know the designation. Peter used it during training." "What did he tell you?" "That it was the safest backup crossing when ice blocked the lower approach. He made me plot it from the old bearings." "Did he say who controlled it?" "No, I assumed the ferry company did. So did everyone." Lauren studied the near landing. "Is the opposite marker still there? Visible and aligned? The gauge, working, and the route record? Recorded, according to the register. The Bureau is looking for the original map." Lauren walked to the edge of the solid decking. She inspected the broken boards without stepping on them. "Our cooperative has been looking for a winter backup," she said. "The regular freight route loses days whenever the lower landing ice is over. Eric's company has vessels. It also has priorities. When tourist charters and freight conflict, we wait." Roger glanced at Marie but stayed quiet. Lauren continued. "We move medical supplies, heating parts, and groceries for 4 communities. We don't need daily service. We need dependable emergency access with fixed response times. The office needs work. I can see that. The landing needs more. I can see that too." Marie carried the meter back toward the weather desk. Lauren followed. Inside, Marie showed her the route description, but kept the register on her side of the counter. Lauren read without touching it. When she reached the maintenance requirements, she looked toward the tide room. Peter kept all this current until he died? Why didn't Eric mention it? I don't believe Eric knows what the record means. Do you? Not yet. Lauren nodded. She respected an honest answer more than a confident guess. If the recorded right survived, and if it runs with this parcel, the cooperative would be interested in a service agreement. How interested? $96,000 a year for guaranteed emergency availability, scheduled freight windows, weather reporting, and landing access. Roger stopped moving. Marie felt the number without allowing it to show on her face. It was more than 3 times the repair estimate. It could keep the building, pay operating costs, and provide work that mattered. It was also conditional on almost everything she couldn't yet prove. What would I have to provide? She asked. A safe landing, documented readings, heat in the waiting room, reliable communications, and either an operating vessel agreement or a qualified carrier under contract. We can arrange carriers if your route control is clear. By when? Our winter plan closes October 1st, the same date the contractor had warned her about. Lauren took a business card from her jacket. I can commission a condition inspection this week. That doesn't commit either of us. If the route fails on ownership or access, we stop there. Who sees the inspection? My board, our insurer. Anyone we need to verify the service, including the ferry company? If they claim an interest, yes. Marie put the card beside the contractor's estimate. Lauren looked at her carefully. I don't want to put you in the middle of a family dispute. I'm already in it. Then I need your permission before I start. Marie looked around the room. The tide board lay open against the counter. The old register showed a maintained crossing. Peter's empty envelope remained beside the current meter. Upstairs, her suitcases were still closed, because unpacking had felt too much like admitting she had nowhere else to go. If she refused, she could repair only enough to stay warm and let the route disappear into the archive again. She would preserve shelter and avoid a fight. If she agreed, Eric and Deborah would learn the office might be worth more than the appraisal they had handed her. Roger waited without advising her. Marie picked up Lauren's card. Commission the inspection, she said. Lauren wrote the landing address on her form. I'll need access Thursday morning. I'll be here. After Lauren left, Marie called the contractor and reserved his next opening. She authorized the deposit from her savings before she could soften the decision into another delay. Late that afternoon, an email from Lauren confirmed the condition inspection. Eric called less than 10 minutes later. Marie let the telephone ring while she closed the route register inside the wall, raised the tide board, and pressed it firmly back into place. Then she answered. What did you authorize Lauren to inspect? Eric asked. The office and landing. For what purpose? She needs a winter crossing. That property doesn't have a ferry. She knows that. Then why is she involving you? Marie looked at the business card beside the contractor's estimate. Because I answered her questions. You don't have authority to negotiate company services. I'm not negotiating company services. She called about vessel availability. That's between Lauren and you. It became my business when she mentioned the old emergency route. Marie said nothing. Eric lowered his voice. That was how he sounded when Deborah stood nearby. Did you find something in those records? I found the route register. The register belongs here. The transfer included the contents of the office. That doesn't mean you can use company information. Then send me a list of the records you believe the company owns. We don't need to do this formally. You asked for the records. I'm trying to keep things simple. So am I, another voice murmured behind him. Deborah, though Marie couldn't make out the words. Eric returned to the telephone. There's a property form we should have handled with the transfer. It separates the old parcel from the company's operating interests. What kind of form? A quit claim. Marie looked toward the tide board. A quit claim to what? Nothing active? Old access language, route references, whatever might still appear in public records. It'll simplify taxes and insurance for both sides. If it's nothing active, it can wait until I read it. I'll bring it tomorrow. Email it tonight. Marie, it's standard. Then it should be easy to email. He ended the call without agreeing. Roger had heard enough from the tide room doorway. Harmless paperwork? He asked. That's the claim? Peter used to say a rope was harmless until someone tied it. He also left ropes in every hallway. Yes, but he never signed one. The quitclaim arrived by email 40 minutes later. Marie printed it at a small copy shop before closing time. She read it in her car beneath the yellow light of the parking lot. The first page described the office parcel. The second released any interest she might have in the company routes, docking privileges, landing approaches, service corridors, marker lines, and water access connected with the property. It didn't mention Kazeloff E31. It didn't have to. Marie drove back to the office with the paper on the passenger seat. She placed it inside Peter's toolbox and locked the box. The next morning, Roger arrived with treated lumber for the landing rails. He had bought enough to replace the worst section and kept the receipt clipped to the dashboard. Marie paid him before he could object. "You're not working for free," she said. "I've been overcharging Peter for years. Peter isn't paying. Roger took the money. Then I'm keeping track of my hours." "Good." They removed the loose rail first. The bolts had rusted into the timber, so Marie soaked them with penetrating oil while Roger cut away the worst wood. She measured each replacement twice. At 9, Eric's truck pulled into the gravel lot. He stepped out carrying another copy of the quitclaim. His shoes weren't meant for mud. He looked at the new lumber, the raised gauge flag, and the open weather room window. "You started construction. We started a railing. Do you have permits? It's a repair. You should still check." "I did." That wasn't entirely true. Marie had called the borough desk and described the work. The person there said replacing existing rails didn't require a building permit, though other improvements might. Eric held up the document. "Can we talk inside?" Roger began drilling a bolt hole. He didn't ask whether he should leave. Marie led Eric to the freight counter. He placed the quitclaim between them with a pen. "This keeps the office separate from company operations," he said. "It also releases routes, access, and landing approaches, because those belong to the company." "Which route are you worried about?" "All of them. Name one attached to this parcel." Eric glanced toward the tideboard. "I'm not carrying route numbers in my head." "You carried this paper down here. Deborah prepared it." "Then Deborah can name one." His jaw tightened. "You inherited a building and land." "You didn't inherit the ferry business. I haven't claimed the business. You're talking to one of our freight customers. Lauren contacted me, because you raised that flag where people could see it." Marie understood then. Lauren's call had alerted him, but the flag had made the work visible. Eric had driven past the landing often enough to recognize the old signal. "What did you think the flag meant?" she asked. "That somebody was testing the gauge." "Who?" "I assumed Roger." Roger stopped drilling outside, though his back remained toward the window. "You saw my car," Marie said. "I didn't know what you were doing. That's why you brought the quitclaim. I brought it because the estate paperwork should have included it. Why didn't it?" "An oversight." "Whose?" Eric pushed the pen toward her. "This is exactly what I wanted to avoid." Marie read the release clause aloud, stopping after the words landing access. Eric rubbed his forehead. "It's broad language." "That's normal. Was it prepared before Lauren called?" He didn't answer immediately. "No," he said. There was the useful piece. Eric and Deborah hadn't found an omitted estate form. They had created one after learning that somebody outside the family had taken interest in the landing. Marie folded the paper once and returned it to him. "I'm not signing. You haven't even spoken to anyone about it. I spoke to you. You need a lawyer." "Perhaps I do." The answer unsettled him. Marie had always disliked paying professionals for matters Peter said the family could handle. Eric collected the pen. "If you create liability at this landing, the company won't protect you. I didn't ask it to. Lauren may think you can provide a crossing. You can't. I've promised her nothing. You're letting her inspect." "Yes." "For a route you don't understand. That's why she's inspecting." His eyes moved toward the tideboard again. "What did the register say?" "You wanted the records returned before I read them. Now you want me to explain them. I'm asking a direct question." "So am I." "What does the company have on E31? Eric's expression answered before his mouth did. "I'll check," he said. "Please do." He left without saying goodbye to Roger. The drill started again as soon as his truck reached the road. By noon, the replacement rails stood straight. It wasn't finished, but it could bear Marie's weight without moving. Roger added a diagonal brace while she replaced 2 damaged deck boards near the stairs. When Marie drove the final screw, she stepped back and tested the board. Solid. The repair gave them a safe path to the gauge. The missing outer section remained taped off, but the inspector could reach the working area without crossing rotten timber. Lauren arrived Thursday with a condition inspector, wearing a waterproof jacket and carrying a tablet. He checked one thing at a time and spoke only when he needed an answer. Marie showed him the electrical panel, the water repair, the weather desk, the route register, and the maintenance books. She operated the gauge while he watched from the landing. Roger sighted the opposite marker through the binoculars. The inspector measured the deck, photographed the new rail, and took current readings at the points Marie had marked. Lauren stood near the office door, taking her own notes. At the end of 2 hours, the inspector removed his gloves. "The route geometry is usable," he said. "The gauge matches today's reference reading. Markers are visible. Near approach needs brush cleared. The landing needs the remaining rails and deck repairs before passengers or freight use it." What about the building? Marie asked. No public occupancy until electrical work and fire protection are complete. The waiting room can pass after repairs. Upstairs is separate if you keep access controlled. And the route record? Lauren asked. I verified the physical system described in the register. I don't verify property rights. Lauren nodded. That's the next condition. The inspector left after sending his preliminary checklist to Lauren and Marie. Lauren remained at the counter. This is better than I expected, she said. Better doesn't pay for repairs. No, but it means repairs could lead somewhere. She placed the checklist beside the contractor's estimate. Every failed item had a blank for completion and inspection. I can hold the winter agreement open until October 1st, she said. I'll need proof of root control before our board approves money. The borough is searching for the original record. Keep me informed. What did Eric say about vessels? He said the company wouldn't discuss service while ownership was disputed. He called it disputed? He did, after asking whether I had seen your documents. Marie folded her arms. Her shoulder objected. Did you answer him? I said, my inspection concerned the old landing. I didn't tell him what you found. Thank you. I'm protecting a possible cooperative agreement, not joining a family side. That's fair. Lauren picked up her jacket. If the record supports you, we can solve the carrier question. If it doesn't, the physical work won't change that. After she left, Marie and Roger cleared brush from the sightline. The work was wet and slow. Marie cut the smaller growth, while Roger handled the thick willow stems. They uncovered another low marker near the stairs. Its plate carried the same route number and a date from Peter's last inspection. By late afternoon, Marie's left arm shook when she lifted the brush hook. Roger took it from her. That's enough. We have another 10 feet. You have one shoulder. I have two. One is making poor noises. Marie hated being stopped in the middle of useful work. She hated more that Roger was right. They returned to the office. The roofing contractor had removed the old flashing while they worked below. He came downstairs carrying a dark piece of roof, decking that broke apart between his fingers. The damage runs farther than we saw, he said. Water followed the chimney brace beneath the metal. How much farther? Across 2 more sheets. I need to revise the estimate. Marie looked at the failed wood, then at the inspection checklist. How long can you hold the opening? 1 day. I have another job waiting. Her telephone rang. This time Deborah's name appeared. Marie answered while the contractor waited. Eric says you refused the separation form, Deborah said. I refused a quit claim. You're forcing this into something it isn't. Then explain why you prepared it after Lauren called. Deborah went silent. Marie looked at the broken decking in the contractor's hand. I'm standing under an open roof, she said. If you want to discuss the property, come here and look at it. She ended the call, turned to the contractor, and authorized the additional roof work. The contractor nodded once and returned to the roof. Marie signed the revised work order at the freight counter. By postponing paint, cabinets, and the upstairs bedroom floor, she could keep the safe reopening work near $28,000. That left almost nothing for mistakes. The first material payment came out of her account that afternoon. Marie watched the balance change on her telephone. For years, she had kept that money untouched. It was meant for an emergency, though she had never decided what kind. Now, the emergency had an address. Roger stacked the cleared brush beyond the parking area, while Marie carried the smaller roof pieces to a waste pile. She used her right arm and kept the left close to her body. When the crew lowered a damaged sheet of metal, wind caught one end. Marie grabbed it before it struck the upstairs window. The weight pulled sharply across her shoulder. She released it, but not fast enough. Pain ran down her arm and into her fingers. The metal hit the ground with a flat crash. Everyone stopped. I had it, the roofer above called. It was moving toward the glass. We can replace glass. Marie pressed her right hand against her left shoulder. Roger came around the building. Can you move your fingers? She opened and closed them. Raise your arm. I don't take medical orders from deckhands. Raise it. She managed halfway before the shoulder tightened. That's enough, Roger said. I know what enough is. Apparently you don't. She wanted to argue. Instead, she went inside and sat behind the freight counter. The chair was an old wooden one with a flattened cushion. Peter had shortened one leg years earlier because the floor sloped. He cut too much, then folded a piece of cardboard beneath it. The cardboard was still there. Roger wrapped ice in a dish towel and placed it on her shoulder. Marie held it while workers moved across the roof above them. You can't keep doing every job, he said. I wasn't doing every job. You were catching sheet metal. I caught it. It's on the ground. The window isn't broken. Roger leaned against the counter. Peter did this too. Did what? Turned pain into proof he was useful. He usually had help. So do you. Marie looked toward the stairs. I can't pay everyone. You paid me. Because I know you'd use that as an excuse later. It's already in my pocket. You can stop proving the point. A vehicle came down the gravel road. Deborah parked beside Roger's truck and stayed behind the wheel long enough to see the roof, crew, lumber, and orange gauge flag. When she entered, her eyes moved from the open tide room to the ice on Marie's shoulder. What happened? Roofing. You're doing the roof yourself? No. Then how did you hurt yourself? Marie removed the ice. You came to look at the property. Deborah placed her handbag on the counter. I came because you ended the call. I had a decision to make. You've made several without understanding the consequences. Roger picked up his cap. I'll check the landing. He left through the river door. Deborah watched him go. He shouldn't be encouraging this. He's repairing a rail. For a landing that closed years ago. The route record was maintained through 2024. Deborah looked at the wall behind Marie. According to what? Peter's maintenance books. Those are company documents. Eric said he didn't know they existed. That doesn't change what they are. Neither does calling them company documents. Deborah took off her gloves one finger at a time. Marie, nobody is denying that you worked here. You've done that for years. That isn't fair. Who ran dispatch when the river flooded? We all did. Who kept the landing reports? You handled most of them. Who rewrote the winter schedules after Eric took over freight? Deborah's lips pressed together. Marie waited. You did, Deborah said. But the company paid household expenses. You lived in the manager's house. Peter took care of you. There it was, the family version of her life. The work counted when they needed a task completed. The support counted when they needed her to appear dependent. The company paid no wages into my name for the first 11 years, Marie said. You and Peter made that choice. Peter said, family didn't send invoices to family, and you agreed. Marie looked down at the towel holding the melting ice. Deborah wasn't wrong about that part. Marie had agreed. She allowed Peter to describe her work as helping because she believed the marriage made separate credit unnecessary. Later, when proper wages appeared, she accepted less than the office manager before her because company money was family money. Except now it wasn't. I did agree, Marie said. Deborah appeared relieved. She mistook acknowledgement for surrender. That's all I'm saying. You and Peter had an arrangement. It doesn't make this office a separate ferry company. I haven't called it one. Lauren has. Lauren offered a conditional service agreement. Deborah's face changed. For how much? That's between the cooperative and me. It concerns our business. It concerns this landing. There is no service without vessels. Lauren can arrange a carrier. Through whom? You'll have to ask her. Deborah walked to the tide room doorway. She looked at the gauge mechanism and the open wooden case. Peter should have dismantled this place when we moved operations. He chose not to. He kept everything. He kept this working. That doesn't mean what you think. You don't know what I think. I know you're spending your savings on a leaking office because you want to feel close to him. Marie let the words settle. Deborah believed she was naming a weakness. Part of it was true. Marie had slept upstairs beneath Peter's old clock. She carried his pocket knife and listened for his footsteps in rooms where no one else would walk. But the route register wasn't grief. The accurate gauge wasn't grief. The maintained markers and recorder reference existed whether Marie missed him or not. I asked you to look, Marie said. Come outside. Deborah followed reluctantly. At the landing, Roger handed Marie the binoculars. She passed them to Deborah and directed her toward the opposite bank. The orange cap, Marie said. Between the two tall alders. Deborah found it. That's an old marker. Peter replaced the cap the summer before he died. Roger says so. He helped. Marie showed her the near plate stamped with the route number, then opened the maintenance checklist Peter had addressed to her. Deborah read it without touching the page. He left you a list, she said. He left a system in working order. That still doesn't tell you who controls the route. No, the recorded map should. Deborah lowered the binoculars. What map? The original route map. The borough is searching for it. For the first time, Deborah seemed uncertain rather than irritated. She recovered quickly. Old filings are full of things that no longer apply. Then why ask me to release them? To prevent confusion like this. Confusion for whom? Deborah returned the binoculars to Roger. Eric has employees and contracts to protect. You're creating questions with customers. Lauren contacted me after she saw the gauge test. Because you made a display of it. I raised a work flag while doing work. You knew people would notice. I hoped someone would. The answer surprised both of them. Marie hadn't admitted it to herself before. She could have tested the gauge without raising the flag. She had raised it because the landing had spent years being treated as invisible. A working signal meant somebody was there. Deborah looked toward the roof crew. How much is this costing? Enough. And if the map says the route ended, I'll still have a safe building. That appraisal values it at $18,000. The appraisal said the foundation might be moving. It isn't. You can't make decisions because one retired deckhand hit a post with a hammer. I made decisions here before Eric learned to read a tide board. That was Peter's operation. I was standing beside him. Beside isn't the same as owning. Marie felt the old answer rise. She nearly said that she had never asked to own it. That had been true for most of her marriage. It was no longer true. The office is mine, she said. Deborah looked at her for several seconds. If you continue using company records to pursue a route, we'll have to protect our interest. Then show me the company record. We will. Deborah walked back to her car. Roger waited until the vehicle disappeared. She came to see whether you were serious. What did she decide? That you're expensive. Marie laughed once, then winced because the movement reached her shoulder. Upstairs, she changed into a dry shirt and tried to lift a saucepan from the top shelf. Her arm failed before her hand reached it. She stood in the small kitchen, angry at the shelf, the roof, and her own body. Keeping shelter had seemed like a clear goal. Repair one room, pay the taxes, make the office livable, ignore Eric and Deborah until the hurt became ordinary. That plan no longer fitted what she knew. If she repaired only the upstairs rooms, the gauge would eventually seize. Brush would hide the markers. The landing rails would fail. The recorded route, whatever its legal effect, would become useless because the physical system behind it had been allowed to die. Peter had preserved it until his last year. He hadn't preserved a bedroom. While Marie went downstairs with the ice towel over her shoulder, the contractor was reviewing the work list. I want to change the order, she said. He pointed toward the roof. That still comes first. After the roof, do the electrical panel and fire protection downstairs. You said the upstairs was the priority. It isn't now. What about the bedroom wiring? Make it safe, but finish the weather desk and waiting room first. The landing rails are after that. Move them ahead of the upstairs floor. He made notes on the work order. That gives you a usable lower office before a finished living space, he said. Yes. You understand you may be sleeping around construction for a while. I already am. Marie called Lauren next. The physical route can be ready by October 1st, she said. That's different from saying you'll try. I'm not trying to preserve an empty building anymore. If the record holds, I'm restoring the crossing. Lauren became quiet. Then I'll start the draft service plan, she said. It remains conditional. I understand. You'll need operating procedures, weather coverage, emergency contacts, and a carrier plan. Send me the requirements. That's several weeks of work. Send them. The email arrived before sunset. It contained forms, inspection standards, sample schedules, and a list of decisions Marie hadn't made yet. She printed the first pages and spread them across the freight counter. Roger read the headings. This looks like a job. It is. You don't have a desk chair that sits level. Marie pulled the old cardboard from beneath the short leg, folded it once more, and pushed it back. The chair stopped rocking. Her telephone showed a new message from the borough archive. The search had moved beyond the scanned records. The reference pointed to one unscanned linen map in off-site storage, but its label had to be checked against the original route number before release. Marie replied with photographs of the register, marker plate, and Peter's final maintenance entry. Then she opened Lauren's requirements and began writing the first operating schedule the old office had seen in years. By 9 that evening, she had divided the requirements into 3 piles. The first depended on the recorded map. The second required licensed carriers or inspectors. The third could be done at the office. Marie started with the third. She wrote opening procedures, weather reporting times, gauge checks, emergency telephone numbers, and rules for closing the landing during unsafe current or wind. She used Peter's old forms only as references. The new procedures carried her name and the office address. Before bed, she emailed an electric service request in her own name. The utility crew arrived 2 days later. They replaced the damaged exterior connection while the contractor installed a new panel downstairs. When the electrician switched on the main breaker, the old ceiling lights flickered. One stayed dark, two buzzed. The light above the freight counter came on steadily. Marie switched it off, then on again. It remained bright. She plugged in the upstairs refrigerator. The motor coughed, rattled, and settled into a low hum. Roger brought milk, eggs, and a covered dish of stew from his freezer. "You can stop bringing food," she said. "I'm charging delivery. You're charging repair hours. I've expanded services." Marie cleared one shelf for his containers. She no longer called Eric when she needed equipment information. She found model numbers, spoke to suppliers, and ordered only what the inspection required. When a question concerned the company's current schedules, she asked Lauren to arrange around them. The change saved time. It also showed Marie how often she had once waited for permission from people who benefited when she waited. Roger repaired the remaining rail sections with a younger roofer handling the high lifts. Marie worked at the weather desk. Her left arm remained weak above shoulder height, so she moved the upper shelves lower and placed daily forms within easy reach. "It looks wrong," Roger said when he saw the rearranged wall. "It works." Peter liked the barometer above the window. Peter was taller. Roger moved the barometer without another word. The contractor finished the roof and flashed the chimney before the next rain. Water no longer ran into the upstairs basin. Marie left the tarp in place for one storm to make sure, then folded it and returned it to the car. The first hard rain arrived overnight. She woke twice and listened. No drip struck metal. No water moved inside the wall. In the morning, the ceiling stain remained dry. Marie made coffee in the upstairs kitchen and carried it down to the freight counter. The lower room was still rough. Unpainted patches surrounded the new outlets. The boarded window needed glass. Tools occupied the waiting area. But the roof held, the electricity worked, and the river gauge had been logged for 7 straight days. She sent the readings to Lauren. Lauren replied with a request for a landing drill. The cooperative could provide a contracted carrier and a weighted freight case. The drill wouldn't begin paid service. It would test approach time, line handling, safe transfer, and weather reporting. Marie checked the river forecast before answering. "Tuesday morning," she said when Lauren called. "The current drops after 8. Have the carrier arrive at 9. Can the landing take the weight?" "The repaired section can. Keep the case under 300 pounds. It'll be 240. Use a low cart with locking wheels." Lauren paused. "Peter used to make me give him the whole plan before he said yes. He wanted to know whether you had one. So do you." "Yes." Lauren emailed the drill notice to the inspector, carrier, cooperative board, and Marie. The notice made the test official enough to be useful and visible enough to create trouble. Marie knew that before she approved it. She and Roger spent Monday preparing the landing. They cleared the last brush from the sightline. Roger tightened the near marker housing, while Marie checked the arrow against the opposite cap. The alignment held. At the freight counter, Marie mounted a new marine radio beside the weather desk. She tested it with the carrier and wrote the working channel on a card. The radio call reached the boat from several miles downriver. "Spencer Landing, this is cooperative carrier," the operator said through static. "Reading you clear." Marie held the microphone near her mouth. "Cooperative carrier, Spencer Landing, clear both ways." Roger stood beside the tide board. "You've missed saying that?" "I've missed people answering correctly." They tested the outside signal lamp next. The old fixture had corroded beyond repair, so Marie installed a temporary amber work light on the landing post. It wasn't the final lamp she wanted, but it could be seen from the approach line. By late afternoon, her shoulder had tightened again. She went upstairs and did the exercises she had once ignored. Slow circles, light pressure against the wall, rest before pain. Accepting help was costing her pride in smaller amounts. It was still cheaper than another injury. Tuesday morning came clear and cold. Marie arrived at the weather desk before 7, though she had slept upstairs. She recorded temperature, wind, water level, and current. She walked the stairs, checked each rail, and placed a folding stop behind the landing cart. Roger brought orange safety vests and a bag of pastries. "I bought 4, he said. "There are more than 4 people coming. I bought 4 pastries. I brought 12 vests." Marie took one pastry and broke it in half. Lauren arrived at 8:30 with the freight case secured in her vehicle. The condition inspector followed in a separate truck. He checked the repaired deck and rails, then signed the temporary drill clearance. The carrier called at 8:54. Marie answered from the weather desk. Wind light from the west. Gauge reads 4.2. Near approach, clear. Amber signal is active. Received, the operator said. Beginning approach. Everyone moved outside. The boat appeared around the bend 6 minutes later. It was smaller than the Spencer Company ferries, with a shallow working deck and reinforced bow. It followed the old line toward the opposite marker, then turned across the current. Marie watched the angle. Too far south, Roger said quietly. I see it. She raised the radio. Carrier, adjust 2 degrees upstream. Hold power through the center current, the boat corrected. Its bow aligned with the near marker arrow. The approach wasn't smooth. Current pressed against the stern, and the operator used more power than Marie expected near the landing. Spray struck the lower deck boards, but the boat reached the platform squarely. Roger caught the forward line. Marie took the stern line with her right hand, looped it once around the repaired post, and held until the operator secured his side. The new rail didn't move. The landing stayed level. Lauren and the inspector rolled the weighted case down the ramp. One wheel caught in a gap between boards. Marie stopped them. Back it up. Lauren pulled the cart clear. Marie placed a flat transfer plate over the gap. She had cut it the previous evening, but hoped they wouldn't need it. Now. The cart crossed without catching. They moved the case to the marked freight area inside the office. Marie recorded arrival time and temperature seal condition. 11 minutes from first approach, call to secured freight. Lauren checked her watch. Our winter requirement is 15. We can remove another minute with a better stern cleat. The inspector wrote the observation on his tablet. They reversed the procedure and returned the freight case to the boat. This time, the wheels crossed cleanly. Marie released the stern line last. The carrier backed away, turned into the current, and followed the route toward the south marker. Roger lowered the amber signal after the boat cleared the line. The drill had worked. No company vessel, company radio, or company employee had been used. The route remained unproven on paper, but the landing system carried a real boat and a real freight load within the cooperative's required time. Inside, Lauren placed the completed drill sheet on the counter. This goes to our board this afternoon, she said. The report should say the ownership condition remains open. It will, and the outer landing section remains closed. It's already noted. Lauren smiled. You always did make Peter write down the bad news. He preferred remembering only the parts that worked. Roger lifted the empty pastry bag. Some of us still do. The inspector left after emailing the signed drill result. Lauren stayed to help Marie move the temporary transfer plate into storage. You've given the board something they can approve if the map supports you, she said. That was the purpose. It also gives Eric a number to compete against. He already knows your cooperative needs service. He didn't know this landing could provide it. He does now. Marie looked through the window toward the road. Eric's company truck was parked near the old sign. He stood beside it with his telephone raised, photographing the carrier as it disappeared around the bend. Lauren followed Marie's gaze. I didn't notify him. You notified the board. Somebody did. Do you want me to delay the report? No, that may give him grounds to object before we have the map. He was going to object anyway. Marie returned to the weather desk and entered the drill time in the new operations log. At the bottom, she wrote the repairs still required. Permanent signal lamp, outer deck section, south side access confirmation, route record authentication. She signed the entry with her full name. Eric came down the path after Lauren and the inspector left. He stopped at the repaired rail and looked over the landing. You brought a boat in, he said. We conducted a condition drill, using a Spencer route, using the line described in the office register. That route was developed by the company. Then the company should have records. Deborah is reviewing them. Good. Eric stepped into the office. His eyes went to the new radio, electrical panel, work procedures, and freight markings on the floor. This is becoming an operation. That's the intention. You told me you hadn't promised Lauren service. I haven't. The agreement is conditional. On what? You already know, the route record and safe reopening. He rested both hands on the counter. You can't run this by yourself. I'm not. Roger is 73 and experienced. Experience doesn't carry freight. Carts carry freight. People make decisions. Eric looked at the operations log. Marie placed her hand over it before he could turn the page. "Office records stay here," she said. "I'm not stealing your notebook. You tried to make me release the route before you knew whether it mattered. That form protects the company. Then protect it with your own records." He straightened. "If Lauren's board receives that drill report, we'll submit a formal company objection. You should submit anything you can support. You think this is only about paperwork?" "No," Marie said. "That's why I repaired the landing." Eric left with the photographs on his telephone and a clear view of what he now needed to stop. Marie locked the rote register behind the tideboard, then sent Lauren permission to release the drill report. The report went out at 4:17. By 6, Lauren called. "The company submitted an objection," she said. "That was quick. They claim the route is part of their operating network. They also say today's drill used proprietary route information without authorization. Did they identify the company record? No. They referenced historic practice and Peter's management. Peter managed this office too." "I know. What happens now?" "The board won't approve the agreement while two parties claim the same route. Our insurer has paused the landing review. The physical inspection passed. The physical part did. The carrier won't return until the access question is resolved." Marie looked at the new radio. It had been useful for one day. "How long will your board hold the offer?" "I can keep it open until October 1st. I can't spend more cooperative money on inspections until then. Send me the objection. You should know there's more than ownership in it." The email arrived while they were still speaking. Deborah had signed the objection as a company bookkeeper. Eric had signed as manager. The first 2 pages described the company's history. The third questioned whether Marie had the staff, equipment, physical ability, and professional capacity to provide emergency service. It mentioned that she lived alone at the deteriorated office. It mentioned her injured shoulder. It said Roger was retired and unavailable for dependable operations. "How did they know about my shoulder?" Marie asked. Eric included photographs from the drill. "In one of them, you're holding your arm." He knew before that. "I'm sorry, don't be. Read the last page." Lauren was quiet while she read. "They're offering to provide service directly from their current landing," she said. "At what price?" "More than our budget. So this isn't only about protecting a route. No. They want the customer? Yes." Marie closed the attachment. "Keep the file open," she said. "I will. But I have to remove the old office from the preliminary winter schedule. That was the first real loss. The drill time, the repaired landing, and the working gauge had created a usable place on Lauren's plan. One letter removed it before the day ended. After the call, Marie erased the provisional service window from the wall calendar. She didn't erase the October deadline. Roger read the objection the next morning. He took longer with the section about his age. "Unavailable," he said. "I'm here every day. They mean you can't guarantee every day. They didn't ask me. They didn't ask me either." Roger set the pages down. "Peter should have put your work in writing. He put the route in writing. We hope." "Yes." Roger walked to the river window. His anger made him restless. Marie's made her precise. She opened the operations requirements and added a staffing section. Primary weather desk, Marie. Backup landing support, to be contracted. Carrier qualifications, pending route verification. "You're writing procedures while they say you can't operate," Roger said. "I'm writing them because they said it. I could sign an availability schedule. You can choose hours. You're not becoming responsible for this place. I'm already responsible for the rails. The rails don't call at 3 in the morning. Neither do you. Not yet." A courier delivered an envelope shortly before noon. Inside was a purchase proposal from the company. Eric and Deborah offered $60,000 for the office parcel, contents, landing access, and all related route interests. The proposal would reimburse certain documented repairs if Marie signed the quitclaim and left within 30 days. The appraisal had called the property an $18,000 liability. Now the family wanted it badly enough to more than triple that figure. Roger read the offer once. That would cover what you spent, and give them the route if it exists. It would give you enough to rent somewhere decent. Marie knew that. $60,000 wouldn't replace a lifetime of security, but it would stop the immediate risk. She could leave before winter, her shoulder could rest. The taxes, roof, and landing would become somebody else's problem. "What do you think?" Roger asked. "I think they found money quickly." "That isn't what I asked?" "No." He waited. Marie folded the proposal and placed it beside the quitclaim. "I haven't decided." Roger nodded. He didn't hide his relief. That hurt in a different way. He wanted her to win, but he also wanted her safe. The two had stopped being the same thing. Eric and Deborah arrived together that afternoon. Marie met them downstairs. She didn't offer coffee. Eric placed his telephone on the counter. Deborah kept her handbag over one arm. "The offer expires Friday," Eric said. "Why?" "We have planning decisions to make. You called the property a liability last week. We're trying to resolve the dispute." "You created the dispute." Deborah looked toward the operations board. "You created exposure by staging a ferry drill. It was a landing drill, with a commercial carrier, commissioned by the cooperative. You aren't insured for commercial operations. No commercial operation occurred. That distinction won't matter if someone is hurt." Marie pushed the company objection across the counter. "You told Lauren I lack professional capacity." "We stated the situation," Deborah said. "You stated my shoulder. You injured it here. That doesn't tell you what I can operate. You can't catch a sheet of roofing without hurting yourself. I don't need to catch roofs to read weather." Eric lifted one hand. "Nobody is saying you're incompetent. The letter uses the word capacity 4 times. It's a business concern. Then keep my body out of it." Deborah's face tightened. "Emergency service requires reliability. That isn't an insult. Neither is no." Eric looked at the purchase proposal. "You'd recover every dollar you put into this place. Certain documented repairs. We can adjust that language. And leave within 30 days. We can help with a rental." "For how long?" "A reasonable period." Marie looked at him. He had said almost the same thing when she asked where the family expected her to live. Give us time, make arrangements, be practical. The offer didn't return her place in the family. It paid her to stop making their version of the past inconvenient. "What happens to the route if I sell?" she asked. "The company evaluates it. And if Lauren signs an agreement, that would be company revenue. So the route matters now, if it's valid. You objected as if it were valid. We objected because you don't know." Eric sounded tired. He believed the uncertainty itself belonged to him. The company had always possessed enough money and authority to wait longer than individuals could. Deborah removed a second paper from her handbag. "This authorizes us to review the archive file with you," she said. "If the map is found, we can determine whether it belongs in the company records." "No, Marie, we're not asking to take it. You asked me to release interest you said didn't exist. You challenged my capacity before asking what help I had arranged. You can review whatever I choose to show after I receive it. You're making family participation conditional. It should have been conditional years ago." Deborah glanced toward Eric. "This is what grief has done." Marie felt the words strike, but she didn't defend herself. Deborah wanted her to argue that she was thinking clearly. Any argument could be turned into another test. Marie opened the office door. "We're finished for today." Eric remained beside the counter. "Friday, Marie, I heard you." After they left, she locked the door and went upstairs. Her 2 suitcases sat against the wall. She opened the larger one and began putting clothes into the dresser. Halfway through, her telephone rang. The borough archive clerk spoke quickly. "We located the storage roll," she said. "The label matches Kasiloff E31. Marie sat on the edge of the bed. "Is it the original map?" "It appears to be the sole original linen sheet referenced by the recording card. We haven't unrolled it. The outer wrapper has recorder markings from 2007, but the internal title is older. Can I see it?" "Yes, with supervised handling. Because your question involves current field markers, you may also request a certified comparison." "What does that involve?" "A state-certified survey authenticator reviews the paper, seal, bearings, and the surviving markers. The archive can transport the roll locally under controlled conditions if the authenticator needs the landing." "How long?" "The first available appointment is next week." Marie closed her eyes. "What does it cost?" The clerk gave her the archive fee and the authenticator's estimated charge. Together, they would consume most of what remained after the contractor's next payment. "Can the company attend?" Marie asked. "Only if you authorize it, unless they submit their own formal records request. The map itself remains public record once handled and indexed. So, Eric and Deborah could not be kept from it forever. If Marie paid to bring the map into the open, she would also show them exactly what she had. The clerk needed an answer by the following morning to hold the appointment. Marie thanked her and ended the call. Downstairs, Roger was gathering tools. "They found it," she said. He stopped. The map? The wrapped original. They haven't opened it. What do they need? An authenticator, archive handling, and more money. Roger looked toward the purchase proposal. You could accept the offer and let Eric pay to find out. Yes. You could ask them to split the fee and give them control of the appointment. He sat on the freight counter stool. What if the map shows the company owns everything? Then I lose the agreement and most of your savings. Yes. What if it shows nothing useful? The same. Roger looked at her unpacked clothes visible at the top of the stairs. You should sleep before deciding. Marie went upstairs, but she didn't sleep. She listened to the refrigerator cycle and the river move beneath the landing. The building was warmer now. The roof held. It could be sold. She could leave with enough money to avoid disaster. Before sunrise, she returned to the weather desk. She declined the company's offer in writing. Then she authorized the archive appointment and certified field comparison. The payment confirmation left her with less than she had ever considered safe. Marie printed it, clipped it to the route register request, and wrote the appointment on the wall calendar. She had chosen to bring the map to the landing where everyone could test it, including the people waiting for it to fail. The archive sent a list of conditions with the appointment confirmation. The map would remain inside its protective roll until the supervised review. No food, uncovered drinks, pens, or adhesive notes were allowed near it. The authenticator would inspect the physical markers first, then compare them with the map at the office. Marie read the list twice and cleared the freight counter. She stored the new operations forms in a cabinet. Roger moved the tools upstairs. They covered the rough wooden surface with a clean sheet of plywood, then checked it with a level. It leans toward the river, Roger said. The whole room does. The archive said flat. Marie folded thin cardboard beneath two corners until the bubble centered. Flat. Roger pressed both hands against the plywood. Stable. The map review was scheduled for Tuesday morning. The marker inspection would begin Monday. Eric called Friday afternoon, minutes after receiving Marie's rejection of the buyout. You didn't make a counteroffer, he said. I'm not selling. You authorized an archive inspection without notifying us. I didn't need your permission. We have an interest in the record. Then submit the company records that support it. We're looking. Have you found anything? Deborah found references to the old emergency route in Peter's files. What kind of references? Maintenance expenses. Paid by whom? The company bought marker paint and cable. Marie remembered ordering paint, cable, bolts, and sealant in combined supply shipments. Materials for both landings often appeared on one invoice. That proves the company bought supplies, she said. It proves company resources maintain the route. Then bring the invoices Tuesday. There was a pause. You're inviting us? Eric asked. I'm allowing you to attend the map review. Allowing? The archive limits the room. You and Deborah may come. You don't handle the map, remove records, or interrupt the authenticator. You don't get to set rules for public records. The archive set the handling rules. I set the rules inside my office. Eric's breathing changed. We'll be there, he said. After the call, Roger leaned against the weather desk. You could have made them wait outside. I could have. I'm not saying you should. You sound like you're saying it. I'm saying they didn't invite you when they divided Peter's office. This isn't that office. No. Marie looked at the cleared counter. Keeping Eric and Deborah away would have given her a few private hours with the map. If it supported her, she could have sent them the result after Lauren's board received it. They would experience the decision the way Marie had experienced the estate transfer, as completed paperwork on somebody else's desk. For a moment, she wanted that. Then the moment passed. The route had survived because someone kept measuring visible things. Bearings, markers, water levels. Marie wasn't going to make its meaning depend on a private version of events. The contractor's final invoice arrived that evening. It included the roof, electrical repairs, fire protection, rails, and lower office safety work. Marie paid the amount due and moved the upstairs flooring into a later list. Her remaining balance would cover food, fuel, and taxes for a short time. If Lauren's agreement failed, the building might be safe while Marie became unable to afford living in it. She printed the payment receipt and put it with the property expenses. No part of the coming review could return that money. Monday morning, the state-certified survey authenticator arrived in a gray vehicle with cases of equipment secured in the back. He wore waterproof boots and carried a clipboard and a clear cover. He didn't ask about the family dispute. He asked for the route number. Marie showed him the register entry and the stamped maintenance plate. He photographed both, then compared the number with a certified copy of the archive index. The index and field designation agree, he said. What does that confirm? Roger asked. That I'm inspecting the correct root system. Nothing about ownership yet. Roger nodded. Plain answers. That's useful. The authenticator examined the near marker housing first. He measured its position from 2 fixed points on the office parcel, checked the stamped arrow, and inspected the concrete base beneath it. Marie stood close enough to answer questions, but didn't guide him toward a conclusion. He scraped loose soil from one edge of the base. This marker hasn't been recently moved, he said. How can you tell? Marie asked. The concrete is old and settled. The surrounding soil layers are undisturbed. The metal pin has been serviced, but the base remained in place. That removed one uncertainty Eric might have raised. The route line wasn't something Marie and Roger had recreated after finding Peter's register. The authenticator checked the gauge position and compared its reading with an independent river reference. The difference remained within the allowed range. He reviewed Peter's maintenance books next. Who made these entries? He asked. Peter Spencer, Marie said. Can anyone here identify his handwriting? Marie and Roger both could. The authenticator noted that, then asked for examples from ordinary business records. Marie provided copies of older landing reports already stored at the office. He compared dates, signatures, letter shapes, and number forms. I'm not authenticating handwriting, he said. I'm confirming that these maintenance entries are consistent with the other records attributed to him. The recorded map and seal carry greater weight. Then why check the books? Roger asked. He tested the gauge cable, inspected the recently uncovered low marker, and sighted the orange cap across the river. The cap aligned with the near arrow. Can you certify that marker from here? Marie asked. No, I need to inspect its base. They drove around to the south side. Lauren met them near the protected landing. She had authorization from the cooperative to open the access gate for inspection, but no carrier or freight equipment was present. The road ended in a gravel turnoff above the river. A narrow path descended through alders. Marie remembered the place before the brush grew. In the survey year, she and Peter had carried equipment down that slope every morning. Peter complained about his knees. Marie complained about his measurements. They were both usually right about different things. The orange-capped marker stood beside an older timber post. Its base was set into a rock shelf above the high water line. The authenticator inspected the bolts, plate, and surrounding surface. This base also appears original to the route period, he said. The cap and sealant are newer maintenance. Roger pointed toward the gray compound. Peter's work. The authenticator measured the bearing back toward the old office. Marie watched the device while he recorded the result. Does it match? Lauren asked. It matches the registered description closely enough to proceed to map comparison. Closely enough? Roger repeated. The original map will provide the recorded bearing. Today confirms the 2 field markers establish a stable line and correspond to the indexed route. That was the practical result Marie needed. The markers were real, remained in their original positions, and matched the route number in Peter's register. The physical line had survived scrutiny. The map still had to show what that line meant. On the walk back to the vehicles, Lauren stayed beside Marie. Our board meets Wednesday, she said. That's soon. If the map supports route control, I can present the authenticated record and the drill report together. And if it doesn't, the old office comes off the winter plan. Marie stepped around a wet route. Eric offered to sell you company service? Yes. Will the board take it? Not at his current price. But if your route fails, we'll have fewer choices. So, he still gains if I lose. Yes. Lauren did not soften it. At the gate, she opened her vehicle and removed a thin folder. Eric sent this to 2 board members, she said. Inside were photographs of the office before repairs, including the sagging roof, boarded window, and taped landing. Another page repeated the company's concerns about Marie's age, shoulder, and staffing. He wants them to see the risk, Lauren said. He wants them to see me as the risk. Some board members do. Marie handed back the folder. Why are you showing me? Because I can respond with inspection results, but I won't make personal claims about you. If you want a written statement from Roger or a medical clearance, that's your decision. A medical clearance for reading weather and managing a landing? It might answer the capacity claim. It would also accept their right to ask. Lauren closed the folder. Yes. Marie considered it. A doctor's note would be easy compared with the archive review. It might reassure cautious board members. It would also turn every old injury into company business and make her continued place at the counter dependent on someone certifying that she was sufficiently able. No medical letter, she said. Use the condition inspection, the drill result, and my operating plan. Judge the work. I will. On the return drive, Roger was quiet until they reached the office. You could let me sign a statement, he said. I may ask for an availability schedule. That isn't the same thing. No. I won't have you tell strangers I'm capable. They watched the drill. Roger parked near the stairs. I was going to tell them I am. Marie turned toward him. The letter says you're too old to be dependable, she said. Unavailable. That too. He looked through the windshield at the repaired landing. I'll give Lauren my actual hours, he said. No promises I can't keep. That's what I need. The archive vehicle arrived late that afternoon. The clerk carried a long, protective tube with both hands. The recorder reference and route number were written on the sealed outer sleeve. She placed it on the prepared counter and checked the room. No overhead leak? She asked. Roof repaired, Marie said. No active heater near the table? Marie switched off the propane unit, though it stood several feet away. The clerk approved the room. The authenticator photographed the sealed sleeve and matched its markings to the index card. The chain of custody is complete, he said. We can open it tomorrow with all named observers present. Eric and Deborah had confirmed attendance. Lauren would represent the cooperative. Roger would attend as the living maintenance witness. Marie signed the handling acknowledgement. The clerk locked the tube inside a rigid archival case and kept the key. The case remained on the counter under a tamper seal. After everyone left, Marie sat alone in front of it. If the map favored the company, Eric and Deborah would see her loss at the same table where she planned to work. If it favored the office, they would lose the assumption that Peter's entire working life belonged to them. Either result would permanently change what remained of the family. Marie could still cancel before the seal was opened. She could take the buyout, allow the map to return to storage, and leave every relationship inside its familiar uncertainty. Instead, she set 5 chairs around the counter. She placed one for herself, one for Lauren, one for Roger, and 2 together for Eric and Deborah. Then she locked the office for the night with the sealed map waiting inside. At 8 the next morning, Marie opened the lower office and switched on the light above the counter. Roger arrived first. He brought coffee but left it in his truck because of the archive rules. Lauren came next with the cooperative's drill report and condition inspection in a slim folder. Eric and Deborah arrived together at 8:45. Deborah carried a thick binder. We found the maintenance expenses, she said. Marie pointed toward their chairs. The authenticator will review anything relevant. Eric looked at the sealed case. Has it been opened? No. Have you seen the map before? Not since the original survey, if this is the same map. You don't know that it is. No. Deborah placed the binder on the counter. Then we should avoid assumptions. They sat without speaking. The archive clerk arrived at 9. The authenticator came behind her and checked the tamper seal before anyone approached the table. The seal is intact, he said. He asked each observer to state a name and connection to the record. Lauren represented the cooperative. Roger identified himself as a former deckhand and maintenance witness. Eric named himself as company manager. Deborah said she was company bookkeeper and Peter's sister. Marie said, I own the Spencer Ferry office parcel. Eric shifted in his chair. The authenticator placed a recording device near his clipboard. Before the map is opened, I'll receive each claimed basis of interest. Mr. Spencer? Eric opened Deborah's binder. The company developed and operated ferry routes on this river for decades, he said. Peter managed those routes as company president. Company money paid for maintenance materials at the old landing, including marker paint, cable, and repairs. Any emergency route he maintained was part of company operations. Does the company possess a recorded route map for Kazaloff E31? We haven't found one in the current files. Does it possess a separate grant assigning that route to the company? We believe the recorded map will show the company interest. The authenticator turned toward Deborah. Anything to add? She placed several invoices on the clean plywood. These are supply purchases from years when Peter inspected the landing. He didn't separate every item by property because the office had always served the ferry company. Do the invoices name Route E31? One lists gauge cable, another lists marine sealant. That wasn't my question. No, Deborah said. They don't name the route. Eric leaned forward. The route couldn't operate without our vessels. Lauren spoke for the first time. A carrier can be contracted independently. We dispute that anyone can use a Spencer route independently, Eric said. The authenticator looked toward Marie. Your claimed basis? The office route register identifies E31 as an emergency crossing from this parcel to the protected south landing. The markers carry the same number. Peter maintained the gauge, markers, and certifications through the year he died. Do you claim the route belongs to you? I claim the map should answer that. He noted her words. Eric looked impatient. The map may describe a line. That doesn't separate it from the company that created it. Marie met his eyes. Is that your complete position? Yes. Peter's work for the ferry company belonged to the ferry company. And mine? Eric hesitated. You worked with him, he said. Is that your complete position too? Deborah answered. You helped survey routes as part of the family business. That didn't give you personal ownership. Marie said nothing more. They had committed to the version they preferred. Peter created, the company paid, Marie helped. The old office held no independent value except what the family chose to offer for it. The archive clerk unlocked the rigid case. She removed the protective tube and broke the numbered seal on its outer sleeve. The canvas-wrapped roll inside had darkened with age. A recorder's label from 2007 was tied around it with cotton tape. The authenticator photographed the label. The older title beneath it was written in Peter's block letters, Kazeloff, Emergency Crossing, Route E31. The clerk untied the tape and slowly unrolled the linen sheet across the prepared counter. The material resisted at first. She placed soft weights along each edge until it lay flat. A detailed drawing of the river filled the center. The office parcel appeared on the north bank. Its boundaries were marked with bearings and distances. The old landing, tide gauge, near marker, and route line were drawn in black ink. Across the river, the line reached the protected south landing and its orange-capped marker. Marie recognized the correction near the north bank. A faint first bearing had been crossed out. A second line began farther from the unstable edge. That was the change she had argued for during the original survey. Her eyes moved to the lower right corner. Two signatures appeared beneath the certification statement. Peter Spencer. Marie Spencer. Marie leaned closer. Her handwriting had changed over the years, but the final letter still rose in the same narrow curve. She remembered signing the map at the old freight counter after Peter checked the bearings one last time. She had forgotten the linen. She hadn't forgotten the morning. Peter had spilled coffee near the compass notes. Marie made him wipe the counter before she signed because the ink was still wet. He told her she worried too much. She told him he worried too late. The small brown coffee mark remained near the edge of the map. Roger saw the signatures. Marie, he said quietly. I see it. Lauren stood on the other side of the counter. Until that moment, she had not known whose signature the archive would reveal. You certified the survey, she said. I took half the bearings. Eric rose from his chair. That's the original survey. It doesn't prove what happened later. The authenticator held up one hand. Please remain clear of the table. He examined the signature area through a magnifying lens, then moved to the route description, printed along the left margin. Marie read the first line silently. An exclusive emergency crossing easement was established along the marked line. It was appurtenant to the Spencer Ferry office parcel on the north bank. A parenthetical sentence explained the unfamiliar word in ordinary language. The crossing right remained with that parcel through later transfers unless formally released. No release appeared on the map. No company parcel was named as the holder. The authenticator read the route description aloud. Eric sat down before he reached the end. Deborah stared at Peter's signature. The authenticator moved to the recorder's material, added in 2007. A sealed notation confirmed the updated route record, repeated the office parcel number, and referenced the maintenance system shown on the original linen sheet. Peter's later certification appeared beneath the recorder's seal. Marie did not sign that section. She hadn't attended the recording appointment. Peter had taken the updated bearings, route register, and original linen map without explaining that he was preserving a right attached to the office. The authenticator compared the seal with the certified archive index. He measured the drawn bearings and checked them against his field notes from both surviving markers. Everyone waited. Outside, The river pushed against the landing supports. The new rail gave a faint wooden creak. The recorder's seal is valid, the authenticator said. The route bearings correspond to the original near and south markers within accepted field tolerance. The gauge location matches the map. The route number matches the register, marker plates, and archive index. Eric touched one of the invoices. The company maintained those markers. The maintenance entries identify Peter Spencer, the authenticator said. These invoices show the company purchased supplies. They don't transfer the recorded easement. What about the vessels? Vessel ownership isn't the recorded right under review. Then what exactly are you certifying? That this is the original recorded map for Route E31, that its seal and recorder notation are authentic, and that its mapped line matches the surviving landing system. He pointed to the route language. The easement identified here is attached to the Spencer Ferry office parcel. It isn't attached to a named vessel or to the current company property. Deborah's hands tightened around the binder. Could Peter have changed it later? She asked. A later recorded release or transfer could change it. None appears in the archive index. Do you have one? No. The answer was barely audible. The authenticator looked toward Marie. Have you signed a release? No. Eric glanced at the rejected quitclaim inside Peter's toolbox. He understood why Deborah had wanted the broad language. Neither of them had known exactly what Marie might hold, but they had tried to make her surrender it before she found out. The authenticator reviewed Peter's annual entries. He compared the required maintenance items on the map with the logs and his field findings. Lauren opened her folder. Is there any map-based reason the parcel owner can't contract emergency use of this crossing? She asked. Not in this record. Operating safety, carrier licensing, and insurance are separate requirements. Those were requirements Marie could meet through work. They were no longer questions Eric could answer for her. Deborah stood and walked to the river window. I saw him come back from the recording office, she said. Nobody interrupted. In 2007, Peter had that roll in a cardboard tube. He said he'd updated the old route. She kept her back to Marie. I assumed he was protecting company property. Did you ask? Marie said. No. Did he tell you who held the route? No. Deborah turned. I entered the recording fee as a company expense because he handed me the receipt. I never looked at the map. Eric stared at her. You knew it was recorded? I knew something was recorded. I didn't know this survived. Marie looked at the map between them. The sentence didn't need anger behind it. The linen, the seal, and the line across the river had already said enough. The archive clerk gave the authenticator a certification sheet. He signed it, attached his field comparison, and marked the route record as validated against the surviving markers. Lauren placed the cooperative drill report beside it. With this authentication, I can present Marie as the route holder, she said. Eric looked at the route line. We'll need time to review. You may request the public archive record, Marie said. You may not remove anything from this office. We're not trying to remove it. You tried to have me sign it away. That was before anyone knew. I knew enough to refuse. Eric closed the binder. The confidence had gone out of his movements. Deborah remained beside the window. Peter should have explained this, she said. Yes, Marie said. He should have. That was not forgiveness. It was simply true. The authenticator completed his work and left with copies of the relevant maintenance pages. The clerk rolled the linen map carefully, but this time she placed a certified full-size reproduction on the counter for Marie. The original returned to its archive tube. Before the clerk carried it away, Marie touched the cotton tape near Peter's old title. She didn't touch the linen. Lauren gathered the authenticated report and condition records. I'll take these to the board tomorrow, Marie nodded. The crossing still required labor, insurance, and a service agreement. The map hadn't supplied any of those. It had changed who was allowed to make the decisions. Marie walked Eric and Deborah to the door. Until we put access terms in writing, no company vessel uses this landing, she said. If you need to inspect a marker, you ask me first. Eric looked as though he might object from habit. Then he said, all right. It was the first time he had asked nothing from her, after hearing no. Deborah walked past him without answering. She and Eric drove away in the same truck, but they sat facing forward with space between them. Marie returned to the counter. The certified reproduction lay beneath protective paper. Her signature appeared in the lower corner beside Peter's. She didn't hang it on the wall, not yet. Roger gathered the empty chairs. You all right? He asked. My coffee is outside. That wasn't my question. It's the answer I have. They sat on the landing with the metal flask between them. Marie's shoulder hurt from tension more than work. Across the river, the orange marker stood where she had placed the line decades earlier. Roger poured coffee. "I didn't know you signed it," he said. "Neither did I, until I saw it." "You forgot?" "I forgot which map survived. There were field sheets, drafts, corrections. Peter took the finished one. He should have told you what he recorded." "Yes." Roger waited for her to defend Peter. She didn't. Peter had preserved the crossing. He had also left Marie to discover its meaning after his death, with her savings nearly gone and his family asking for a release. Love didn't make that wise. Good intentions didn't remove the cost. The next morning, Lauren called from the cooperative board meeting. "The route condition is accepted," she said. "The board approved the agreement subject to final safety, sign-off, and insurance." Marie sat at the weather desk with the inspection list open. "What about the company objection?" "They've been asked to provide a recorded interest or withdraw it. The authenticated map controls our route decision unless they produce one. They won't. I don't expect they will." "When do you need the remaining repairs?" "Before October 1st. Permanent landing light, outer deck section, final electrical check, and carrier schedule. The electrical check is booked. And the rest? Roger and I are ordering materials today." Lauren paused. "The agreement pays $96,000 annually in monthly payments after service begins. There's no payment before final sign-off." "I understand. You'll carry the operating costs until then." "I understand that too." Marie had enough left for materials and the insurance premium if nothing else failed. The upstairs floor would remain bare. She could live with that. Lauren brought the contract that afternoon. They reviewed it at the freight counter. The cooperative would receive emergency availability, fixed freight windows, weather reports, and access to the waiting room. Marie retained authority to close the route for unsafe conditions. Qualified carriers would operate the vessels under separate arrangements. Lauren pointed to the closure section. "You have final weather authority at this landing. Not the carrier. The carrier controls the vessel. You control whether this office opens the route." Marie read the sentence again. For years, she had advised Peter when to close. He made the final call, even when he used her exact words. Now the responsibility belonged to her. It was respect with a cost attached. "If I close too often, the cooperative can review the agreement," Marie said. "Yes. If I stay open when conditions are bad, people get hurt." "Yes." "Good." Lauren smiled slightly. "You're the first person who has called that good. It means the paper understands the work." Marie signed. Lauren signed for the cooperative, then handed Marie a copy. "This isn't rescue money," she said. "We expect the service. I wouldn't accept it otherwise." After Lauren left, Marie placed the agreement in the weather cabinet and locked it. Roger arrived with lumber prices from 2 suppliers. Marie showed him the maintenance schedule she had written. 8 hours a week through winter, she said. "More during repairs if you choose. Paid." "You're giving me a schedule?" "You wanted one. I wanted to prove I was available." "This proves when you are." Roger read the duties. Landing inspection, gauge maintenance, rail and light checks. No solo heavy lifting. No emergency obligation outside agreed hours. "You put restrictions on me. I put restrictions on both of us." "Where are yours?" Marie turned the page. "No overhead lifting. No solo freight handling. Backup required for landing work during ice." Roger nodded. "All right, you're supposed to argue. I'm 73. I save my strength." He signed the schedule. Deborah came alone 2 days later. She remained near the front door and held out the company's old keys to the office. Marie had already changed the locks, but she accepted them. "I copied the authenticated map request number," Deborah said. "You can order a public copy." "I know. Any access here goes through me. I heard you the first time." Marie waited. Deborah looked toward the tideboard. "The company paid those expenses in good faith. I didn't accuse you of stealing. You've made it appear we tried to take something. You asked me to release it before you knew what it was. We were preventing an old record from interfering with current business by having me sign away every possible interest. You could have had it reviewed. I did. I refused." Deborah's eyes moved toward the signed cooperative agreement. "Peter left us to clean up his decisions. He left me to find mine. That map doesn't change everything. No, it didn't change the years Marie had worked without full credit. It didn't restore the manager's house. It didn't make Deborah generous or Peter more open. It changes who controls this crossing," Marie said. Deborah picked up her handbag. You always wanted him to choose you over the family. Marie felt the old needs stir, then settle. I wanted my work named honestly. He loved you. That wasn't the question. Deborah left without apologizing. Marie locked the door behind her, not to make a point, but because the office now held equipment, records, and responsibilities that required controlled access. Eric came the following morning. He stopped outside until Marie opened the door. Can I come in? He asked. Yes. That small question was new. He carried a single sheet of company letterhead. It withdrew the company objection to the cooperative's use of Route E31. It also corrected the statement about Marie's professional capacity, saying the company had no basis to evaluate her current operations. Marie read every line. Deborah signed this? No. I signed as manager. Does she agree? She agreed not to stop me. That isn't the same thing. No. Why did you change it? Eric rubbed one thumb across the edge of the counter. Because we don't have a recorded interest. And because the photographs showed a working drill, not incapacity. You had those photographs when you filed the objection. I was angry. You were trying to stop the agreement. Yes. He made himself say it without adding an excuse. Marie placed the withdrawal beside Lauren's contract. I'm sending this to the board now. I already sent it. That was the right thing. Eric looked at the certified reproduction, still covered on the side table. I didn't know you surveyed the route. You didn't ask what I did here. I thought I knew. You thought Peter did the work and I helped. Eric looked down. That's what he said. And what did you see? He took time before answering. I saw you at the weather desk every morning. I saw people call you when they couldn't find him. Marie remembered Eric as a young adult, standing in that doorway, asking for fuel money and forgetting to return the office keys. She remembered teaching him how to read current changes from debris on the water. Peter praised him for learning quickly. I should have stopped the capacity language, Eric said. Yes. I'm sorry. Marie folded her hands on the counter. An apology couldn't reopen the room they had emptied. It couldn't make him stand beside her after the estate transfer or ask where she planned to sleep. What happens next matters more, she said. He nodded. I heard the outer rails still need replacing. They do. I can help Roger. Are you offering company labor? No. Me. Why? Because I know how to set landing rails. That isn't what I asked. Eric looked toward the river. Because I helped push you out, and I can't change that with a letter. Marie let the silence remain. You work under Roger's schedule, she said. You ask before using the landing. You don't bring company equipment unless we agree in writing. All right? And helping doesn't create access to the route. I understand. We'll see. She didn't thank him. He hadn't done the work yet. That afternoon, the cooperative board acknowledged the withdrawn objection and approved Marie's route control without qualification. The insurance review resumed. The gain didn't fill her bank account. It gave her more work and less room for error. Marie ordered the permanent landing lamp and the last treated boards. When the supplier asked for the business name, she looked at Peter's old sign through the window. Spencer Ferry office, she said. The order would arrive Monday. Eric came Monday morning in work clothes without the company truck and waited beside Roger's tools until Marie unlocked the landing gate. Eric picked up the far end of a treated board. Which section? He asked. Roger pointed toward the outer landing. We remove the damaged rail first. Then we measure. I brought measurements from the old company plan. We measure. Eric looked as if he might argue. Then he placed the plan in his tool bag. They worked through the morning. Roger directed the repairs. Marie recorded river conditions and checked material deliveries. Eric carried lumber, drilled bolt holes, and followed the measurements taken at the landing. At noon, he reached for Peter's old wrench without asking. Marie said his name. Eric stopped. May I use it? Yes, that was the first test. The second came when Roger rejected one of Eric's supports. It's square, Eric said. To the deck, maybe. The deck isn't square to the post. It'll hold. Roger handed him the level. Then show me. Eric checked the post, adjusted the support, and drilled new holes. He didn't mention that he managed newer landings or larger crews. The finished rail ran straight along the outer section. Marie leaned her weight against each post. Nothing shifted. Eric wiped sawdust from his sleeves. I can come back when the lamp arrives, he said. Call first. I will. He did. 3 days later, he called from the road and waited until Marie opened the gate. He and Roger mounted the permanent landing lamp on the restored post. Marie connected its control to the weather desk. When she switched it on, a steady amber light reached across the river. The south marker answered with its orange cap in the afternoon sun. The final inspector returned near the end of September. He tested the rails, deck boards, electrical panel, fire alarms, waiting room heater, radio, gauge, and lamp. He found one loose cover on an outlet. The electrician repaired it that afternoon. The inspector signed the safety approval the next morning. Marie emailed it to Lauren and the insurer. By noon, the old office appeared on the cooperative's winter schedule. The service agreement began on October 1st. No money arrived that day. The first monthly payment would come after Marie completed the opening service period and submitted her records. She still had fuel to buy, taxes to pay, and a nearly empty savings account. The crossing had value because it required work. Marie woke before 6 each morning. She checked wind from the upstairs window, dressed, and went down to the weather desk. She recorded the gauge reading before making coffee. Roger worked his scheduled hours. When he wanted another shift, he asked. When his knee hurt, he went home instead of pretending it didn't. Marie did the same with her shoulder. She hired lifting help for freight windows and kept the cart's wheels oiled. She no longer reached for loads that belonged on equipment. Her operating procedures required 2 people at the landing during transfers, including when the freight looked light. Lauren arrived for the first scheduled crossing with groceries, furnace parts, and 3 insulated medical cases. A few passengers waited inside the lower office. The room had new glass in the river window and plain paint on the walls. The old wooden benches had been cleaned and repaired. A kettle stood near the weather desk. Hooks by the door held wet coats. Marie checked the carrier's approach call. Wind from the northwest, she said into the radio. Gauge reads 3.8. Route is open. The boat followed the marked line and reached the landing without correction. Roger secured the bow. The hired freight hand locked the cartwheels, while Lauren checked the medical seals. Marie recorded each case at the counter. Nobody asked whether she could manage. They watched her manage. The waiting room warmed as people came and went. Boots left water near the door. Someone spilled coffee. A freight label stuck to the counter and tore when Roger removed it. The office looked less finished by the end of the morning. It also looked used. Lauren returned after the final crossing with the completed service sheet. 7 minutes under the requirement, she said. Current was favorable. You could take the compliment. I took the contract. Lauren laughed and signed the sheet. Before leaving, she looked at the certified route map mounted beneath protective glass beside the tide board. Marie's signature was visible in the lower corner, but the map wasn't displayed as a trophy. It was there because carriers needed to understand the line. Peter would recognize the place, Lauren said. He'd complain about the radio. He complained about every radio. He trusted wires more than signals. He trusted you. Marie straightened the service sheet. Sometimes. Not always enough to tell me what he was doing. Lauren accepted that answer. Peter could have protected the route and still failed Marie in the way he protected it. The restored office had room for both facts. Eric visited the following week. He telephoned first. I need to ask about landing access, he said. For the company? Yes. One of our lower approaches will be closed for repairs next Thursday. We'd like permission to use your near marker for a single equipment crossing. What time? He gave her the window. What vessel? He gave her the name, operator, and load. Send the request in writing, Marie said. The carrier fee and landing conditions are on the office schedule. You'd charge the company? I charge every commercial carrier. A pause followed. All right, Eric said. I'll send it. The request arrived 10 minutes later. Marie reviewed the load, weather window, and insurance information. She approved one crossing under the same rules applied to Lauren's carriers. On Thursday, Eric arrived aboard the company vessel. He called the approach exactly as required. Marie answered from the weather desk. Company carrier, Spencer Landing. Road is open for the approved window. The vessel came in cleanly. Eric stepped onto the landing, but didn't enter the tide room. He handed Marie the signed use record at the counter. Thank you, he said. You're welcome? He looked around the waiting room. Passengers occupied 2 benches. A woman near the heater held a grocery carton on her lap. Roger was explaining the afternoon tide to a carrier. You made it work, Eric said. We made it work. His eyes moved toward Roger, Lauren's freight hand, and the people waiting by the river window. He nodded. I'll call before the next request. That's the rule. I know. Marie didn't invite him upstairs. He didn't ask. Deborah sent a written request for copies of Peter's maintenance expenses. Marie provided the pages relevant to company purchases and kept the original register at the office. 2 weeks later, Deborah sent a corrected company inventory. It removed the old landing route from the company's active asset list. There was no apology with it. Marie signed the receipt and filed the correction. That was the relationship Deborah could manage. Accurate paper, controlled contact, and no admission beyond what the record required. Marie stopped waiting for more. The first cooperative payment arrived on schedule. Marie paid the remaining operating bills, restored part of her emergency savings, and ordered flooring for the upstairs bedroom. She didn't buy everything at once. The waiting room chairs came from a used furniture shop. Roger repaired a small table somebody left beside the road. Eric helped carry the flooring upstairs after calling ahead. He worked for 2 hours, accepted coffee, and left before supper. The next month, he returned with new boards for the flower boxes. "These aren't company materials," he said before Marie asked. "I bought them." "Why flower boxes?" "I remember there were orange flowers, nasturtiums. I couldn't remember the name. They won't grow until summer." "I know." Marie accepted the boards. Repair came in pieces like that. A withdrawn objection, a request made properly, work completed without a claim attached. It didn't restore the years behind them, and Marie didn't pretend it did. By winter, the upper floor had become her home. She placed Peter's photograph on the dresser and his binocular strap near the river window. The chipped mug stayed downstairs at the weather desk, where it held pencils. Her clothes filled the drawers. Her coat hung beside the upstairs door. The cardboard box from the company office went into a storage cupboard, empty. On cold freight mornings, passengers came inside before sunrise. Marie switched on the heater, filled the kettle, and posted the route conditions. Roger opened the landing gate during his scheduled shift. Lauren checked freight at the counter and argued about coffee strength. The work remained demanding. Ice formed on the lower rails. Wind loosened signs. The gauge cable needed attention after every freeze. Marie closed the route twice when the current carried heavy debris, even though freight was waiting. Lauren supported both closures because the readings supported them. The office earned its place by being dependable, not always available. If stories about reclaiming dignity after family abandonment matter to you, subscribe and return for the next inheritance story. One evening after the last crossing, Marie locked the freight counter and shut down the radio. Roger had gone home. The waiting room chairs stood empty beside the warm heater. She walked the landing, tested the gate, and checked the amber lamp. Its light rested on the repaired rails and reached toward the opposite marker. Upstairs, she opened the final suitcase. Only a wool sweater and a framed photograph remained inside. Marie put the sweater in the dresser and placed the photograph beside Peter's old clock. Then she folded the suitcase and slid it beneath the bed. The river moved below the office, dark and steady. A carrier light passed far downstream, then disappeared around the bend. Marie checked the window latch, drew the curtain halfway, and crossed the room to the small lamp beside her chair. Marie switched on the upstairs window lamp while the repaired landing lamp burned below beside the waiting river.